Chapter 76. I had heard about the secret of the venomous insect technique. Ever since I had met Zhao Ying, I had been on guard. Who would have thought that I would fall into her trap? The pain in my body was strange, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It felt like countless needles were poking my body. Moreover, this pain seemed to change with my heartbeat. Every time his heart beat, the pain would increase by a fraction. I covered my chest with my hand. Almost instantly, sweat broke out on my forehead. After a few seconds, I couldn't endure the pain anymore. My legs went soft, and I slumped to the ground. At the same time, I took a deep breath and forced myself to close my eyes. Then I began to chant the Calm Heart incantation. As I chanted the Calm Heart incantation, the pain in my body slowly subsided. My dizzy head also became clear-headed. At this moment, Zhao Ying had taken off the black veil covering her face. Her resentful eyes looked at me calmly. When she saw me slumping on the ground, she finally opened her mouth to talk. You sorcerers from the Central Plains are just SOSO. I haven't used the power of the Queen of Venomous Insects, and you can't endure it anymore. Just wait to die with those scumbags. Then, she covered her face with the black veil again and turned to leave. At this moment, under the effect of the Calm Heart incantation, I had completely calmed down. My mind entered an empty state. Then I guided the Tao energy into my body and used the pure Yang energy to suppress the pain in my body. After suppressing the pain, I slowly opened my eyes. My heart was as cold as ice. Previously, I had thought that Zhao Ying was pitiful, but now I didn't have that kind of compassion in my heart. From the moment she told me to wait for my death, I knew that this woman had gone completely crazy. I wasn't a noble person. Zhao Ying had experienced such a thing, so I could understand how she wanted to take revenge on the people who had bullied her. I would even support her actions. However, if she wanted to take revenge on all the people related to this matter, and she didn't show any mercy to me, a person who was accidentally involved in this matter, it meant that Zhao Ying had lost her mind due to her anger. At this moment, she wasn't a victim anymore. She was a crazy woman. After seeing Zhao Ying leave the corridor, I took out the compass and called the snake spirit. The snake spirit was the king of all insects when it was alive, and goo were actually just insects. In a sense, the snake spirit was also a kind of goo when it was alive, and it was a very powerful one. Although the snake spirit failed to transform into a jiao and lost its physical body, it gained a trace of true dragon chi. As for the true dragon energy, it was the nemesis of all insects. It was naturally not a problem for it to deal with goo insects. After the spirit snake came out, it first looked around. It didn't see Tong, so it got bolder. It lifted its head and impatiently asked me, "Why did you call me here?" The thickness of this fellow's skin made me gasp in amazement. The last time I met the little white snake, it tried to resist the eye. After it was suppressed again, I thought that he would be depressed for a period of time. I didn't expect that he would return to his previous sloppy self so quickly. I pointed at myself and angrily said to him, "There's a bug in my body. Help me get it out." After hearing this, the snake spirit's eyes brightened. It faced the sky and laughed. Then it said to me proudly, "It turns out that there are times when you need me. Call me Grandpa Snake Immortal first. Maybe I'll help you get the bug out if I'm in a good mood." I sighed. This fellow was really strange. He didn't learn his lesson. He was really hopeless. I didn't say anything and reached out to pinch the jade bracelet. When the snake spirit saw my action, it immediately descended from the sky. It shyly frowned and moved closer to me. Its huge snake head rubbed against my arm and said in a flattering manner, "Big brother, I was just joking with you. Why did you take it so seriously? With our relationship, how could I not help you when you asked? Just watch. I'll get that bug out for you." Then, the snake spirit's dark body coiled around me and spun around me a few times. Then it flicked its tail. A flesh-red bug that looked like an earthworm crawled out from under my armpit. The snake spirit used its tail to pick it up in front of me. "See, you found it, didn't you?" The spirit snake chuckled and bragged to me like a dog. As I was about to receive the insect, the spirit snake raised its tail and lifted the insect into the air. Then it opened its mouth and swallowed the insect. It chewed a few times and swallowed it in one gulp. After eating it, the snake spirit let out a sigh of relief and sighed. I haven't eaten such a delicious little worm for a long time. It's a pity that there's only one, so it's useless. By the way, where did you get this thing? Go and get me 2 more. Although I knew that the snake spirit was effective in dealing with the bug, I didn't expect that it could deal with it that easily. What surprised me the most was that it ate the bug. Although the bug was small, it was a living creature with a real body. The snake spirit only had a soul and didn't have a body. I was curious. How could it eat the bug like a human eating meat? I asked the snake spirit. It lifted its head and smiled proudly. This bug has energy. If I eat it, my power will increase. Of course, I want to eat it. Moreover, even if I don't have a body, I'm still the ancestor of this bug. I can eat it however I want. What's so strange about that? Then, it looked at me with disdain. It looked as if it was saying, "You're so ignorant." Looking at his proud face, I couldn't help but want to tease him. I deliberately sighed and said, "I don't care how you eat the worm, but I want to use it for research." "But you ate it. What do you think we should do now?" When the snake spirit heard this, it immediately screamed in anger. It shouted, "Don't be unreasonable. You were the one who had worms crawling into your body, and you called me out to help. I helped you out of kindness. So what if I ate the worm? This is called a reward. Do you understand?" I spread my arms. If we both think that we're right, we have no choice. I have to call Tong Tong to be the judge. Then, I didn't wait for it to react and directly called Tong Tong. As soon as it saw Tong Tong, the snake spirit's face darkened. It looked at me with a resentful face. After a while, it said, You're such a bully." Then, the snake spirit started to shake its head. It shook left and right a few times as if it had lost its mind. I was startled. I thought that it had lost its mind. After shaking its head for a long time, it spat something sticky out of its mouth. It pushed it to me and said, "Here's your bug." Then, it looked as if it didn't want to live anymore. It squatted and sulked. However, while he was sulking, he was also looking at Tong Tong from the corner of his eyes, his face full of fear. I was just teasing it. Of course, I wouldn't complain to Tong Tong. I called Tong Tong because I wanted it to sense Zhao Ying's aura when she left. The voodoo insects in Zhao Ying's body are full of yin qi, and the yin soul itself is full of yin qi. Tong Tong is an extremely rare ghost baby, so he is very sensitive to yin qi. Zhao Ying has not been gone for a long time, so Tong Tong can track her according to the remaining yin qi in the air. I asked Tong Tong and confirmed that my assumption wasn't wrong. I asked Tong Tong to lead the way. We were going to chase after Zhao Ying. Before we left, I kicked the snake spirit. It was still sulking and didn't want to talk to me. I smiled at it. I was just joking. If you want to eat that bug, you can eat it. The snake spirit turned to look at me. It looked a little tempted, but it didn't want to do that. It snorted and turned away. It's just a pile of rotten meat. I don't want it. You don't want it? Then forget it. I can only throw this bug into the trash can. I sighed and prepared to walk over to get rid of the insect. However, the spirit snake was one step ahead of me and swallowed the insect. Then it snorted and said, "It's a waste to throw it away. Let me eat it." Then it smacked its lips and was about to return to the compass. I quickly stopped him again and asked, "Do you want to eat more worms? It's just an ordinary bug. It doesn't taste good. I'll take you to find a more powerful bug. It's definitely more delicious. What do you think?" The spirit snake stopped and turned to look at me. Her face was full of disdain. She said to me with disdain, "Forget it. Aren't you the one who was poisoned? You want me to help you deal with the Mother Goo, right? You've been poisoned, and you want to take revenge. Do you think I didn't recognize that it was a bug? Humph. You didn't tell me the truth, and you still want to lie to me. Ah, this fellow also knows about venomous insects." I curiously asked him. The serpent spirit felt proud of himself. He started to brag about how he used to live in the jungles of the southern region. He often encountered venomous insects. According to him, he used to call them venomous insects and ate them like they were his meals. Although I didn't know much about bugs, I knew that the king of goo was extremely rare. It could only be cultivated by an extremely skilled goo master. Its strength was terrifying. Geomancers at the Earth Master realm couldn't deal with it. Only those at the Heaven Master realm could deal with the King of Goo. The snake spirit hadn't even succeeded in turning into a flood dragon. It was impossible for it to eat the King of Goo. I didn't expose him. Do you want to eat the Queen of Goo? The snake spirit tilted its head and hesitated for a while. It seemed that it didn't want to help me. However, it couldn't resist the temptation of the Queen of Goo. It nodded and agreed. Chapter 77. After leaving the dormitory, Tong Tong took me to the dark area behind the factory. We walked to the wall near the factory's back door. Tong Tong followed Zhao Ying's lingering Yin energy. It was the same route she had taken when she left the factory. From this route, I could see that Zhao Ying had been very careful. Not only did she take the dark path, but she also had to climb over the wall to get out of the factory. Although the Miao women's voodoo had a mysterious and unpredictable power, the voodoo could not improve their physical fitness. Zhao Ying was still a girl with a weak physique. It was really hard for her to climb in and out of the factory with such high walls. Of course, I didn't need to climb over the wall. I went to the back door and asked the security guard to open the door for me. Before I moved here, Chief Wang had told the people in the factory to cooperate with me no matter what I wanted to do in the next few days. After we got out of the back door, Tong Tong took me and continued to walk forward. Although there were a lot of workers in this electronic industrial zone, it was only the inside of the factory that was lively. The outside was desolate, especially the back of the factory. It was a wasteland. Although there was an asphalt road, there were no streetlights, and there were very few cars. I could see that Zhao Ying wasn't ignorant. After using the venomous insect to kill so many people, she had been hiding in this desolate place for the past few days. After walking along the asphalt road for around 10 minutes, Tong Tong took me to a dirt road. After walking for a few hundred meters, Tong Tong pointed at a 2-story house not far from us. Zhao Ying is hiding in this house. I had investigated Zhao Ying's situation. She was from Guizhou, and she didn't have any relatives in Shenzhen. The house in front of us couldn't be her relative. If she had been staying here for the past few days, perhaps she had also cast a venomous insect on this house. My heart became colder. If that was the case, Zhao Ying didn't deserve my sympathy at all. Venomous insects were mysterious and unpredictable. I didn't dare to intrude, so I asked Tong Tong to check the situation first. Tong Tong flew into the house. Less than half a minute later, he came back out. Zhao Ying is in there. Moreover, there are 2 other people in the house. However, they are dead. It was just as I had thought. Zhao Ying had also cast a venomous insect on this house. After confirming this point, I no longer had any misgivings in my heart. In addition, Tong Tong told me that the courtyard and the rooms inside the house were filled with poisonous insects. As soon as we entered the house, Zhao Ying would find us. In this situation, I didn't dare to rush in. I thought for a while and called the spirit serpent. Do you know how to destroy these poisonous insects without letting Zhao Ying know? In the end, the snake spirit shook its head and said that the goo worm was connected to the goo mother's life. As long as the goo worm died, the goo mother would definitely sense it. As a goo breeder, Zhao Ying would definitely know. There was no other way. It seemed like he could only force his way through. I asked the spirit serpent. After I confirmed that it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with the mother goo, I asked him to go to the courtyard. After he had cleaned up the insects in front of him, I would follow him. Goo worms could increase the strength of the snake spirit, so he might as well take this opportunity to let it eat its fill. After listening to me, the spirit serpent was so excited. He rubbed his palms and dashed into the courtyard. It was dark, so I couldn't see what he had done. Then, I heard a painful groan from upstairs. It was Zhao Ying's voice. Goo worms were connected to one's heart. If the spirit serpent had swallowed those insects, it must have hurt Zhao Ying a lot. Around 1 minute later, the spirit serpent returned from the courtyard. He looked satisfied. All the insects in the courtyard have been cleaned up. Don't worry, he told me. I brought Tong Tong and the spirit serpent to the house. Since Zhao Ying had found us, I didn't hide my tracks. I directly went to the front door and kicked it open. I asked the spirit serpent to walk in front of me while we entered the house together. As soon as I entered the room, I was startled. On the ground, not far from the door, was a badly decomposed corpse. I could vaguely recognize that it was a middle-aged man. However, his body was still moving. It looked really strange. After taking a closer look, I found that it wasn't the corpse that was moving. Instead, it was the corpse that was crawling with countless worms. Those worms were moving back and forth on the corpse, making it look like the corpse was moving. I felt disgusted. I had seen so many corpses, dried corpses, and skeletons, but none of them had this disgusting feeling. The sight of so many small insects squeezing together made my scalp tingle. The spirit serpent's eyes brightened. It looked as if it had just seen a delicious meal. It directly stormed forward and used its tail to pick up the corpse. Then it shook the corpse in the air. Countless insects fell from the corpse. The spirit serpent's big mouth grabbed all of them and stuffed them into its mouth. I couldn't see any insects on the corpse, but the spirit serpent was still holding the corpse and shaking in the air. I thought it was a glutton, so I said to it, "There are no more insects on the corpse. Don't mess with the corpse. Hurry up and go upstairs with me." The spirit serpent turned around and looked at me with disdain. "This corpse is a breeding pond. The mother insect is inside. Otherwise, why do you think there are so many insects?" Then, the spirit serpent eagerly shook the corpse, trying to find the mother insect. I curiously looked at the spirit serpent. The mother insect wasn't in Zhao Ying's body. Was it in the corpse? Was a breeding pond? The spirit serpent really knew a lot about breeding insects. Before I could ask, the spirit serpent shook the corpse. A dark red ball of meat the size of a lighter suddenly fell from the corpse. It looked like a fat caterpillar. After it fell from the corpse, it didn't fall to the ground. Instead, it flew toward the stairs. Perhaps it was because it was too fat, but its flying speed was very slow. Moreover, it was shaky. I couldn't help but worry that it would fall. After seeing this fellow, the snake spirit suddenly cackled and threw the corpse down. With a shake of its tail, its huge body flew forward. In an instant, it ran to the side of the chubby caterpillar and used its tail to wrap around it before flying back to my side. Is this the mother insect? Why does it look similar to a goo insect? I looked at the huge red caterpillar and asked the spirit serpent curiously. The spirit serpent sighed and explained to me. How can it look similar? This isn't an ordinary mother insect. It's a Chilean insect. I didn't expect that such a rare insect would still exist. Chilean insect? I carefully looked at the fat caterpillar, but I couldn't see any similarities between it and a Chilean. I was about to ask the spirit serpent again, but it couldn't wait. It directly threw the fat caterpillar into its mouth. Then it coiled up on the ground and slowly swallowed it with a face full of enjoyment. Looking at the way he was chewing slowly, this chubby caterpillar seemed to really be something precious. Right at this moment, a painful scream came from the staircase not far from us. I lifted my head and saw that Zhao Ying had come downstairs. She stood at the staircase with blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. While screaming, she glared at the spirit serpent. Her face was full of anger and fear. As she screamed, she slowly sat down on the staircase. She clutched her chest with both hands as if she was in great pain. I didn't find it strange. The mother insect was connected to the one who raised it. Once the mother insect died, the one who raised it would be hurt badly. However, it was a little strange. The mother insect was usually attached to the one who raised it, and it wouldn't come out easily. However, Zhao Ying's mother insect was placed on a corpse. Then, before it could see the person, the spirit serpent took it out and ate it. The skills of the one who raised it were all on the mother insect. Once the mother insect died, the one who raised it couldn't control the other insects. Shortly after, the spirit serpent swallowed the mother insect. It even burped in satisfaction. Then it told me that it was going to rest and went back into the compass. On the staircase, Zhao Ying looked at me with an ashen face. Her eyes were full of disbelief. She asked, "Who are you? Why do you have a king insect?" King insect. Is she talking about the spirit serpent? She must have mistaken me for someone else, so I didn't reply to her. Instead, I said to her, "You don't need to know who I am. You've harmed so many people, so someone has to seek justice. I came to seek justice for those innocent people." Zhao Ying smiled in disdain. More blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. She said to me in a weak and hoarse voice, "I've said it before. None of those people were innocent. They all deserved it." Seeing her face, I felt an unknown flame of anger in my heart. She had done such a terrible thing, but she still acted as if she was doing justice for the heavens. It was really infuriating. I pointed at the body on the ground and asked her, "All right, we'll do as you said. Those people were wrong, but what did this person do wrong? Just because you wanted to hide here, you killed him. Is this what he deserved?" Zhao Ying pursed her lips and lifted her head. She pondered for a while, then said stubbornly, "I want to take revenge, but I only have the mother insect. If I want to raise a lot of insects in a short time, I have to use people to raise them." I shook my head. "No matter what excuse you have, you've killed innocent people." Zhao Ying suddenly laughed. She held the railing and stood up. She looked at me with resentment and stubbornness. "All of you Han people are the same. You only know how to bully people and talk about morality. But who has ever thought about me? Those people ruined my body. I can't live anymore. But before I die, I want to take revenge. I'm a woman. If I want to take revenge, I can only rely on my own insect. But I only have the mother insect. I can't kill people. What else can I do?" We Miao people clearly distinguish between kindness and grudges. We repay kindness with kindness and take revenge with hatred. If I can't even take revenge before I die, I won't be able to enter the embrace of the Julie God after I die. If I want to kill those people and raise insects in a short time, I can only use human corpses to raise them. What else can I do? After listening to her words, I didn't know why, but I didn't feel as angry as before. After staying silent for a long time, I opened my mouth and said to Zhao Ying, "With your personality, you're not suitable to work outside. Now that you've killed people and taken revenge, there's no reason to kill innocent people. You should go back to your hometown." Zhao Ying suddenly coughed. While coughing, she said, "I can't go back. The Kirin insect isn't an ordinary mother insect. It's my life insect. I've raised it with my blood since I was young. It's connected to my blood. If my life insect dies, the person who raised it dies. I've killed so many people. I should die too. That way, no one will owe anyone anything." Then, she slowly sat down on the stairs. Her eyes suddenly became bright. She stared at me and continued, "But I've contacted my mom. She'll come to see me soon. Even if you have the king of venomous worms. Mom." Chapter 78. When the natal goo died, the one who raised it would die. I had heard that when the mother goo died, the one who raised it would be hurt badly. However, I didn't know about the natal goo. I sighed as I looked at Zhao Ying lying on the ground. Her body didn't move anymore. At first, I didn't want to trouble her anymore. I just wanted to kill the mother goo and save the people who were affected by it. However, perhaps it was the karma of the heavens that caused this result. Perhaps it was good. It was the fairest result for the people who were being tortured by the parasites, and for the two people who were being used by Zhao Ying as a pawn to raise the parasites. Just like what Zhao Ying had said, no one owed anyone anything. However, I didn't feel good about it. Zhao Ying died because of me. Although I didn't do anything, I was the one who broke her natal goo, which led to her death. From a certain point of view, I was the one who killed her. I didn't know what I was feeling right now. I stood in front of Zhao Ying for a long time before sighing and leaving the room. When I got out of the room, I lit a cigarette and called Wang Yongjun. I told him the address and asked him to bring some people here. While I was waiting, I called the serpent spirit. I wanted him to get rid of all the parasites in the room. I didn't want to leave anything behind. However, the serpent spirit told me, "If the mother goo dies, the other parasites will die soon. We don't need to deal with them." I gave up. I wanted to ask the serpent spirit why he knew so many parasites. However, before I could ask, the serpent spirit looked dispirited. After eating the Kirin goo, I need some time to digest it. During this time, I shouldn't call him again. Then, he returned to the compass and didn't move again. Wang Yongjun was very efficient. Half an hour after I notified him, he hurriedly brought 3 cars and more than 10 people to the scene. As soon as he got out of the car, he ran to me and asked, "Brother Zhou, Did you find the Meow Woman? I came here in a hurry, so only brought a dozen people with me. I'll do whatever you say. If we don't have enough people, you can wait for a while, and I'll call more people for you. I shook my head and pointed at the house behind me. Zhao Ying is dead. She's in this house. There are 2 corpses in this house. I think they were killed by Zhao Ying. When Wang Yongjun heard this, he was stunned and did not speak for a long time. I thought that since so many people had died, it would be hard for him to handle the situation. However, after a moment of silence, Wang Yongjun burst into laughter. He patted my shoulder and said loudly, "Brother Zhou, you're really something? To tell you the truth, I've been on tenterhooks these past few days. I was afraid that the factory wouldn't be able to resume production and that they would lose money. I was also afraid that I would be implicated. Now this insidious woman is finally dead." I'll go in and take a look." After saying that, he excitedly led his men into the house. After a few minutes, he came out again with a happy face. He nodded at me and said, "It's that woman. Brother Zhou, it's all thanks to you this time. Don't worry, you've helped me so much, I won't treat you badly." Then he pulled me to the car and said that he would hold a celebratory feast for me when we get back. I hurriedly stopped him and asked, "3 people died here. I'm afraid it won't be easy to handle, right?" Wang Yongjun waved his hand and said unconcernedly, "I can still handle it if I call the people up and down. Brother Zhou, you don't have to worry about it." I sat in Wang Yongjun's Mercedes-Benz commercial car. Originally, I wanted to go back to the factory's dormitory to take my luggage, but when Wang Yongjun heard that, he immediately arranged for someone to help me take care of it. Then, he directly sent me to the hotel. Because it was too late, when I got back, I declined Wang Yongjun's celebratory feast. He didn't insist, but he promised me that he would hold a celebratory feast the next night, so I had to agree. I couldn't refuse, so I agreed. After all, I had already planned to work in this industry in the future, so it was necessary to have a good relationship with a rich businessman like Wang Yongjun. The next afternoon, Wang Yongjun sent a driver over and gave me a check for 1 million yuan. Then, he picked me up and took me to a high-end Chinese restaurant in China City to attend the celebratory feast that Wang Yongjun had specially prepared for me. This Chinese restaurant was on the top floor of a 5-star hotel. After the driver took me up, Wang Yongjun was already waiting for me at the door. He came over and held my arm intimately. After exchanging a few words with me, he took me into a large private room in the restaurant. Inside the private room, all kinds of exquisite dishes had been placed on the table. It looked dazzling, and there were 4 people of different ages sitting at the table. When they saw us come in, they all stood up. Wang Yongjun took me to the table and first introduced me to those people. "This is the one I mentioned, the one who dealt with the Meow Woman's venom, Brother Zhou." After saying that, he turned his head and smiled as he introduced them to me. "Brother Zhou, you are a fan of feng shui and metaphysics. These are my friends, and they're all proficient in metaphysics. Today, you should have a good exchange with them." Through his introduction, I learned that these people in front of me were people from the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. 2 of them were middle-aged, Yang Kaichun and Meng Yu. As for the other 2 young people, one was Wu Jipeng, and the other was Xie Tianyu. After Wang Yongjun introduced us to each other, these people looked at me with surprise, but they didn't say anything. Only the middle-aged man, named Yang Kaichun, had a kind face. He smiled at me and said, "There aren't many young and promising feng shui masters in our metaphysics world. I didn't expect to meet one here today. I'll have to learn from Mr. Zhou today." I quickly clasped my hands at him and said with a smile, "Brother Yang, you're flattering me. I'm a junior, and you're senior. If I want to learn from you, I should be the one asking for advice." After exchanging greetings, we sat down at the table. At this time, I raised my head and carefully observed these people. I couldn't see anything from the others, but Xie Tianyu's body had a faint trace of Tao energy. It was obvious that he was at the Earth Master level, and his strength was not weaker than mine. Wang Yongjun also knew a lot about metaphysics. As soon as we sat down, he talked about the Meow Woman's venom and discussed how to deal with the venom from the perspective of metaphysics. He specifically asked me what method I used. Of course, I couldn't tell them about the snake spirit, So I just made up a story and said that I would use talismans to solve the problem. Talismans were something that a feng shui master could create after entering the Earth Master level. After hearing my words, the four people from the Metaphysics Society lifted their heads and looked at me, especially Xietianyu. Previously, he had been wearing an arrogant face and didn't even look at me. Now, he only stared at me for a while. However, he immediately sneered and moved his eyes away. As for the other three people, they had a strange expression, especially Yang Kai-chun, who had been exchanging greetings with me. He even sighed. I was surprised and didn't understand what they meant. It wasn't appropriate to ask, so I could only suppress my doubts. With Wang Yongjun adjusting the atmosphere, the meal was quite lively. However, it was mostly me, Chief Wang, and Yang Kai-chun talking. The others were quite indifferent. I pondered for a while and guessed that Wang Yongjun had asked them about Zhao Ying's venom, but they couldn't solve it. Now that I had solved it, they felt that they had lost face, so they were indifferent to me. At the end of the meal, Yang Kai-chun suddenly asked me, "Brother Zhou, have you joined the Metaphysics Society?" I shook my head. I've been studying metaphysics these past few years, and I've been fascinated by the Metaphysics Society, but I haven't found a suitable opportunity. Yang Kai-chun put down his chopsticks and asked with a smile, "Then if Brother Zhou wants to develop in Shenzhen, how about joining our Metaphysics Society? We can also give you a recommendation." After he said that, Wang Yongjun also chimed in. "That's right. I heard from Nanzhou that Brother Zhou just graduated this year, and you haven't decided on your next step. In my opinion, you should stay in Shenzhen. If you can't do it, then you can work in my company. You can also discuss the salary." I was a bit curious as to what position Wang Yongjun could give me in his company. After asking, he told me that I wouldn't have to go to work and that I would only need to help with matters related to metaphysics, such as choosing a location for a factory. I pondered for a bit and guessed that Wang Yongjun wanted to sell me a favor. It just so happened that I was new here and I wasn't familiar with this place. If I could work in his company, I would at least be able to settle down. With that thought, I nodded and agreed. Wang Yongjun was overjoyed and promised me an annual salary of 2 million RMB. After this matter was settled, he also tried to persuade me to join the Shenzhen Metaphysics Society. I was naturally willing, but when Yang Kai-chun suggested to let the others recommend me, Xie Tianyu and the others all had faces full of perfunctory expressions. It was clear that they weren't willing. Seeing this situation, I couldn't force them to recommend me, so I directly declined the matter and said that we'll talk about it when there's a chance in the future. Yang Kai-chun sighed and didn't say anything. After the meal, Xie Tianyu and the others left, but Yang Kai-chun stayed behind and said that he had something he wanted to talk to me about. Chief Wang understood and left with a smile. Before he left, he even asked the driver to stay behind and drive me back to the hotel. Chapter 79. Why did you accept President Wang's business? Yang Kaiken's first question stunned me. I didn't know how to answer. After thinking for a while, I said, "I happened to meet him, and I can also earn some money." Yang Kai-chun looked at me strangely. "You're so young, yet you're already at the Geomaster realm. You don't lack money, do you?" I thought about it. President Liu had given me an advance of 500,000. Although I spent a lot on the compass, I still had around 200,000 left. I didn't lack money. I nodded. Yang Kai-chun looked puzzled and asked, "If you don't lack money, why do you have to deal with those Miaojiang people?" I realized that something was wrong and asked him, "What's wrong? What's wrong with those Miaojiang people?" Yang Kaiken's expression became even more strange. "You don't know?" This time, I was completely confused. I smiled wryly and said, "Brother Yang, what's going on? Just tell me. You're asking me so many questions. I'm confused." Yang Kai-chun wore a strange expression. After a while, he said, "We feng shui masters can make a good living by looking at the feng shui of people's graves. Even if we read people's fortunes, we can still earn a lot of money. If we can earn money safely, why do we have to deal with those dangerous things? In the metaphysics world, there are 4 kinds of people that we should avoid if we can. The Miaojiang people, the Southeast Asian tamed head, the Tai Kumen Thong, and those in our country who raise ghosts. We geomancy masters painstakingly study metaphysics, and only when we reach the earthly master realm do we have the strength to protect ourselves. However, these few spells, as soon as we learn them, they're all killing methods. Why bother provoking them? I nodded after hearing what he said. What he said made sense. Metaphysics wasn't martial arts. It wasn't even the main thing. Metaphysics was the study of feng shui, or the science of astronomy and geography. It was completely different from the tamed head, Kuminthong, and other evil arts that had strong offensive power. Yang Kaichan sighed and said, "The others are fine, but the ones you can't provoke the most are the Miao people. The power of the Gu insects is overbearing, but the key is that these Miao people are stubborn and very united. If you provoke one, there will definitely be a large group behind him, and they will not rest until you die. They are very difficult to deal with. Do you really think that no one can solve CEO Wang's problem?" Wang Yongjun is a person who likes metaphysics. He even has a good relationship with President Su of the Metaphysics Society. If he really wanted to get rid of this Miao woman, all the directors of the Metaphysics Society would have the ability to do so. But no one is willing to do it. A few years ago, someone from our Shenzhen Metaphysics Association made a move against a Gu woman from Miaojiang. In the end, someone from the old Miao village from Xiangxi came. Guess what happened in the end? That feng shui master's whole family was poisoned. I was dumbstruck. No wonder the people of the Metaphysics Association looked at me strangely today. It was as if they were looking at an idiot. It turned out that there was such a reason behind it. Yang Kaichun continued, "This kind of thing is not honorable to say. We feng shui masters usually don't mention it to outsiders. Although Wang Yongjun likes metaphysics, he doesn't know anything about it. Originally, no one would be willing to help him even if he offered thousands of dollars. I didn't expect that you would solve the problem for him directly." After listening to his words, I finally understood. I found it strange before. Zhao Yongquan was the president of the Kaifeng Taoist Association, so he was much stronger than me. Shenzhen was a big city with a strong southern metaphysics atmosphere. How could there not be a few powerful metaphysics masters? It turned out that there was a hidden story. No wonder Wang Yongjun was so attentive to me and even gave me an employment contract. In his eyes, I was more powerful than the entire Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. Before Yang Kaichun could finish his sentence, he sighed and said, "I reckon this Miao girl is not simple. I want to take a look the last time." The workers under Wang Yongjun were poisoned by the heart-devouring goo. This kind of goo is not common. It's a goo that only the real Miao children in the 26 Miao villages can use. "Brother Zhou, you're in big trouble this time." I nodded. I remembered Zhao Ying said something about mother before she died. It seemed that Yang Kaichun was right. Moreover, Zhao Ying said something like, "Even if you have the Gu King." It seemed that the spirit snake couldn't deal with the mother she mentioned. This was really troublesome. I was silent for a while, then asked Yang Kaichun, "Do you have any ideas?" Yang Kaichun shook his head. "The Miao barbarians that use the Gu are all bloodline descendants. As long as you kill a Gu mother, they will definitely have a way to find you. You won't be able to hide. The only way right now is to find a backer that can protect you." That's what I was thinking when I advised you to join the Metaphysics Association. If you join our Shenzhen Metaphysics Association, then no matter what, President Su and the others will help you. Maybe then the Miao barbarians won't dare to cause trouble for you. Yang Kaichun was really a warm-hearted person. We weren't related, and we didn't know each other before, but he was willing to help me. I was very grateful. After thinking about it, I really didn't have any other ideas. Joining the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association might be the only way to protect myself. After making the decision, I asked Yang Kaichun what the conditions were to join the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. Yang Kaichun told me that there weren't any strict conditions. I just needed to be a feng shui master and have 2 members' recommendations. I frowned. Just now, Xie Tianyu and the other 2 didn't seem willing to recommend me. Can you contact someone else? Yang Kaichun shook his head. There's no need to contact someone else. Ordinary feng shui masters need at least 2 people's recommendations to join. You already have the strength of a geomaster. Generally speaking, As long as you are willing to join, the Feng Shui Association will be willing to accept you. Moreover, you will be able to become a director of the Metaphysics Association. After knowing this, I relaxed a little and left the restaurant with Yang Kai-chen. We agreed that he would take me to the Feng Shui Association tomorrow to handle the procedures for joining. When I went to bed that night, I thought about what Yang Kai-chen told me and felt helpless. This was the first business I received after I decided to become a Feng Shui expert. Who knew that it would become like this? Moreover, Zhang was already dead. I couldn't regret it even if I wanted to. I could only resign myself to fate. I wanted to call the snake spirit and ask him about the goo, but the snake spirit said that I couldn't call him for a few days, so I could only give up. The next morning, Yang Kai-chen came to find me and drove me to the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. The Metaphysics Association was also in the city center. It wasn't far from my hotel, so we arrived in around half an hour. Yang Kai-chen parked the car in front of the building. After I got out of the car, I looked up and saw the big red words in front of the building, Shenzhen Metaphysics Culture Research Association. I couldn't help but click my tongue. It wasn't because of the ancient words, but because of the building in front of me. The land in Shenzhen was expensive, and a building in the city center was even more expensive. I didn't expect this Metaphysics Association to be this luxurious. From this point alone, I could see that the Metaphysics Association wasn't simple. I stood outside and watched for a while. After Yang Kai-chen parked the car, he came over and led me into the building. While walking, he explained the Metaphysics Association to me. The lower 5 floors are the public activity area. Usually, there will be some exhibitions, lectures, and the like to spread some common Feng Shui knowledge for the benefit of the public. The other floors are the places that only members of the Metaphysics Association can go to. There's a large conference room on the top floor. Usually, the Metaphysics Association will hold meetings there. Besides the top floor, the other floors are the offices of the Metaphysics Association's directors. Then, he said to me with envy, "You're already in the Earth Master realm. If everything goes well today, you will immediately become a director after you join the Metaphysics Association and get an office." As we walked, we quickly took the elevator to the 5th floor. At this point, the elevator couldn't go any higher. It needed to be switched to an elevator with someone on duty. Since only members were allowed to enter, I couldn't easily enter even with Yang Kai-chen leading me. In the end, Yang Kai-chen contacted the vice president on duty today. After explaining the situation, he brought me to the elevator and went to the top floor. When I got out of the elevator on the top floor, I was shocked by what I saw. A brown stone that was half the height of a person was placed not far from us. It had a square edge and a round head. There were a few big words written on it, Mount Tai's Shigandang. The stone didn't look like much, but I could feel a majestic feeling from it. I could even feel the aura of a true dragon's vein coming from it. The Tao energy in my body suddenly became abnormally active. This wasn't a Mount Tai stone that an ordinary person could write on it. Mount Tai's Shigandang. It was a real Mount Tai stone. According to legend, in the 3rd year of Emperor Xiao Zhao of the Western Han Dynasty, a large stone rose from the peak of Mount Tai. It was said in the Han Dynasty's Jiju Zhang, facing a fierce tiger, Shigandang, invading everything, Longyang. The real Mount Tai stone was the giant stone that had absorbed the essence of the dragon's energy at the peak of Mount Tai. However, after the Ming Dynasty, this giant stone was divided into many smaller pieces that were 3 feet and 3 inches tall. It became known as the Mount Tai stone. The world's dragon's veins originated from Kunlun, so Kunlun was the ancestral dragon. Kunlun was divided into 3 dragons. From Mount Tai to the sea, Mount Tai was the middle dragon. Since ancient times, there's been a saying in Feng Shui, Kunlun rises from Mount Tai to the sea, so it is the middle dragon. Since ancient times, the middle dragon has been the most prosperous and long. In the death scripture, there was also a saying, Kunlun's veins originate from Mount Tai, and it is inferior to the universe. It was because of these unique conditions that the Mount Tai stone had been nourished by the essence of the dragon's veins. It created the characteristics of a righteous person. A noble cultivator would look at it to nourish their energy, while an evil spirit would look at it to die. After seeing this Mount Tai stone, I was even more shocked by the luxury of the Shenzhen metaphysics branch. I couldn't help but stop and walk forward. I reached out my hand and rubbed the Mount Tai stone. Feeling the nourishment of the Mount Tai stone, the Tao energy in my body also improved. After a while, when the Tao energy calmed down, I was reluctant to let go of it. However, the jade bracelet on my chest felt cold. It got out of my clothes and stuck to Mount Tai. It was like a piece of iron being attracted by a magnet. It stuck to Mount Tai. Chapter 80. True Mount Tai stones were very rare. The one in the Shenzhen metaphysics branch was definitely a treasure here. If someone else saw the jade bracelet sucking on it, they would definitely cause trouble for me. I looked left and right. Fortunately, there was no one else here. Yang Kai-chan was standing behind me, so he couldn't see the situation on my chest. I quickly reached out to pull the jade bracelet. Who knew that the jade bracelet suction force was very strong? I pulled for a long time, but the jade bracelet didn't move at all. This was awkward. If I couldn't pull the jade bracelet off, what should I do? This was something that the red shadow left for me, and it was also Tong Tong's body. I definitely couldn't throw it away. Seeing that time was getting longer and longer, Yang Kai-chun, who was standing behind me, was getting impatient. I was also very anxious. At that moment, the jade bracelet suddenly fell off the Mount Tai stone. I couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. I didn't care if the jade bracelet was different or not. I quickly put it back into my clothes, turned around, and left the Mount Tai stone. I returned to Yang Kaiken's side. Brother Zhou, this Mount Tai stone is our branch's treasure. It said that our branch's first president, Senior Li Guang, specially sent it back when he became the president of the National Metaphysics Union. It's used to train and encourage the younger generation. That's why he put it here, so that everyone in the Metaphysics Union can see it. Yang Kai-chun explained the origin of the Mount Tai stone to me with a smile. I was a little surprised. I had previously understood the situation of the Metaphysics Union. It was established in the 80s, and there were only 4 presidents. I didn't expect that one of them was from the Shenzhen Metaphysics Union. However, with such an old president, it was no wonder that this treasure was placed in public. The old President Li that Yang Kai-chun mentioned was really a broad-minded person. It was no wonder that he could become the president of the National Metaphysics Union. This old senior is really a blessing to the younger generation. With this Mount Tai stone, our branch's feng shui master can observe it every day. His strength will definitely increase a lot, right? I casually asked. That's right, Yang Kai-chun said with some emotion. Ever since old President Li brought back this stone of Mount Tai, our branch has produced many talented people. These years, we have steadily become the #1 branch in Guangdong. Even the country, our branch can be ranked. I didn't agree or disagree with his words. The prosperity of the Shenzhen Metaphysics Society wasn't just because of this Mount Tai stone. The old president had become the president of the National Metaphysics Society, so he would definitely take care of his hometown's people. As the saying goes, when one man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rise to the heavens. With a powerful person like the old president, it was impossible for the Shenzhen branch to not prosper. Speaking to this point, Yang Kaiken's expression suddenly turned gloomy. With an envious tone, he said to me, "However, this stone of Mount Tai is only beneficial to people like you who have entered the Earth Master Realm. For people like us, looking at it would at most clear our minds and raise our spirits. Unlike you, who can absorb the dragon vein qi and strengthen your Tao qi after observing it." Speaking to this point, I suddenly remembered that after the jade bracelet fell off, there seemed to be something different about the Mount Tai stone. At that time, I was anxious and didn't take a closer look. But now that I heard Yang Kai-chun mention the dragon vein qi, I suddenly turned my head to look at the Mount Tai stone. I was immediately stunned. The Mount Tai stone, which was previously filled with dragon vein qi, now didn't have a trace of dragon qi. It didn't even have the original lofty feeling. It looked just like an ordinary stone. What was going on? I stealthily looked at Yang Kai-chun. His expression was calm, so he shouldn't have noticed the abnormality of the Mount Tai stone. I couldn't help but rejoice. The change in the Mount Tai stone was definitely related to the jade bracelet. Luckily, there was only Yang Kai-Chen here. If there were other Geomaster Realm Feng Shui masters here, they would have definitely noticed the change in the Mount Tai stone. On the way to the vice president's office, I deliberately walked behind him. I stealthily extended my hand to take out the jade bracelet on my neck. I was stunned once again. The pure and dense dragon vein chi emitted from the jade bracelet was the same as the Mount Tai stone from before. Could it be that when the jade bracelet was placed on it, it absorbed the dragon vein chi from the Mount Tai stone? But how is that possible? The chi of dragon vein could only appear in the true dragon vein. It was common sense in feng shui. Mount Tai stone had a wisp of dragon chi because it had been nourished in the dragon vein for years. No one had ever heard of anything that could absorb dragon chi. While I was puzzled, the dragon vein chi from the jade bracelet suddenly surged toward me. In just a blink of an eye, the massive dragon vein chi surged into my body, turning into my Tao energy. This time, the increase in Tao energy was much greater than when I was studying the Mount Tai stone. When I was studying the Mount Tai stone, the dragon vein chi was passively attracted to me. But now, the dragon vein chi that the jade bracelet had absorbed from the Mount Tai stone had automatically entered my body. The effects were completely different. After calming down, I closed my eyes to sense the Tao energy in my body. After the increase, my Tao energy was now as thick as my arm. It had far surpassed the realm of drawing chi like a finger. Although it was still far from the realm of drawing chi like a pillar, it was still a big improvement. I lowered my head to look at the jade bracelet. There was still a thick dragon vein chi surrounding it. It seemed that I could absorb it many times. I was excited, now that the Tao energy in my body was as thick as my arm. After a few more times, I would definitely reach the realm of drawing chi like a pillar. If that happened, I might not even need to find the true dragon vein. The dragon vein chi that the jade bracelet had absorbed from the Mount Tai stone would be enough for me to advance to the next realm of Earth Master. It sounded unbelievable, but after thinking about it, Mount Tai stone had allowed countless feng shui masters to study and absorb the dragon vein chi. After hundreds of years, the dragon vein chi wouldn't have decreased by much. The dragon vein chi that it contained was unimaginable. It was more than enough for me to advance to the second realm of Earthmaster. The only thing I was worried about was the people from the Metaphysics Society. If they found out about the abnormality of the Mount Tai stone, would they link it to me? However, after thinking about it, no one would think that anyone would be able to absorb the dragon vein chi. In the end, they would just leave it be. While I was weighing my options, Yang Kai-Chen, who was walking in front of me, suddenly stopped. He pointed at a door on the side and told me that we had arrived at the office of the vice president in charge of membership. I nodded and pulled myself together. I put the matter of the jade bracelet aside and followed Yang Kai-Chen. After knocking on the door, we entered. After entering, Yang Kai-Chen briefly explained the situation to the vice president called Wang Chaofei. Then, Wang Chaofei turned his head and said to me enthusiastically, "Brother Zhou Yi, welcome to the society. I will immediately help you with the registration procedures. However, to be promoted to a director, the president has to personally handle it. President Su won't be in Shenzhen for the next few days, so you'll probably have to wait for a few days." I smiled and nodded. "No problem. It'll be the same whenever it's done." As I said that, I observed the vice president. There was an obvious fluctuation of Tao energy on his body, but I couldn't see his specific cultivation. He should be at least one realm higher than me. Seeing that I had agreed, Wang Chaofei took out a form and handed it to me. He asked me to fill it according to the requirements. After filling the form, Yang Kai-Chen also wrote his name in the referral column and handed it to Wang Chaofei for archiving. After that, I was officially a member of the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. After completing the procedures, Wang Chaofei enthusiastically asked me to stay. He said that he wanted to have dinner with me and welcome me into the society. He finally gave up after I declined him many times. However, he still said that after President Su returned in a few days and I was promoted to a director, he would call the people from the Metaphysics Association to hold a welcoming party for me. This time, I didn't decline. Since I had joined the Metaphysics Association, I still had to learn the ways of the world. It was something that I couldn't avoid. After settling this, Wang Xiaofei talked to me about the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. Only then did I know that the President Su that they were talking about was called Su Lin. His strength seemed to be only one step away from the Heavenly Master rank. After hearing this news, I was very interested in this President Su. I was looking forward to meeting him in a few days. He was the strongest feng shui master I had ever seen in real life. Other than President Su, there were more than a dozen vice presidents in the Metaphysics Society. The vice presidents weren't assigned according to their work, but according to their realm. Just like how one could become a director after entering the Earth Master realm, one could become a vice president after reaching the second Earth Master realm, which was the Touch of Acupoint realm. After the vice presidents were the directors. There were around 30 of them, but more than 20 of them were old men who were over 50 years old. It was almost impossible for them to advance further. Only a few of them were young, and they were the ones that the Metaphysics Association wanted to nurture. During this time, Wang Xiaofei specifically mentioned Xie Tianyu, whom I had met last time. He said that he was the person with the most hope of entering the next realm among the directors of the Metaphysics Association. Moreover, he was still young and had hopes of reaching the peak of the Earth Master realm in the future. He even had a chance of becoming a Heavenly Master. He was the hope of the entire Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. After saying that, he led the topic back to me and said with a smile, "In the past, there was only one Xie Tianyu. Now, there's another one. Haha, Brother Zhou Yi, you're younger than Xie Tianyu. Your talent shouldn't be bad. You might even have the chance to reach the Heavenly Master realm in the future. It's really enviable." I smiled and modestly declined. The Heavenly Master realm is something that I can only hope for. The hope is too slim. Brother Wang, you're flattering me. Wang Xiaofei sighed and said with a gloomy expression, "No matter how slim it is, you still have a glimmer of hope. You still have something to look forward to. Unlike me, I have no hope at all." I also sighed. When a feng shui master reaches Wang Xiaofei's pressure point realm, if they couldn't find the chi points in their bodies before they were 40 years old, they wouldn't have any more chances. After the jade bracelet absorbed the dragon energy from the Mount Tai stone, I could see the possibility of advancing to the pressure point realm. Although I was still young, who knew what would happen in the future? Perhaps I would end up like Wang Xiaofei, with no hope of advancing further. We chatted in Wang Xiaofei's office for a long time. It wasn't until noon that I left with Yang Kai-Chen. After returning to the hotel, Wang Yongjun heard the news and came over to celebrate with me. He dragged me out for a meal. After I declined, he agreed to wait for Chairman Su to come back, and I was promoted to a director, just like Wang Xiaofei. In the next few days, I stayed in the hotel and studied the changes in the jade bracelet. There was still a thick dragon energy on it, but I couldn't absorb it in a short period of time. I had to wait until the dragon energy I absorbed stabilized before I could absorb it again. It would take about a month. After understanding it, I wasn't in a hurry. I slowly stabilized the Tao energy in my body. At the same time, I secretly paid attention to the Metaphysics Association. Chapter 81. Yang Kaiken's words baffled me. Both he and Vice President Wang Xiaofei had told me that as long as a geomancy master was a member of the Metaphysics Society, he or she could become a member of the Society's board of directors. I asked Yang Kai-Chen, and he sighed. "It's because of Xie Tianyu." Xie Tianyu? I recalled the arrogant young man I saw a few days ago. Why did he want to ruin my plans? Yang Kai-Chen continued without waiting for me to ask. "It's because of Wang Yongjun. Xie Tianyu also knew about it. After President Su came back, he wanted to help you with the procedures, but Xie Tianyu went to look for President Su and told him that you offended Miao Manzi. He also said that you joining the Metaphysics Society would bring trouble to the society and asked President Su to expel you. After President Su understood the situation, although he didn't expel you, he suppressed the matter of you being promoted to a director. Sigh, I suggested you to join the Metaphysics Society to seek refuge. But now that you haven't been promoted to a director, I'm afraid President Su won't help you when the old Miao village people come looking for you. I didn't have a good impression of Xie Tianyu, and after knowing about this, my impression of him worsened. Yang Kaichen was the same as him. He knew that I offended the Miao tribe's master, but Yang Kaichen took the initiative to tell me the reason and help me think of a solution. Xie Tianyu, on the other hand, kept obstructing me. If I can't join the Metaphysics Society, what should I do when Zhao Ying's mother comes looking for me? After thinking for a long time, I couldn't think of any other way. I shook my head and temporarily suppressed this matter. Then I asked Yang Kaichen, why did Xie Tianyu do this? Yang Kaichen sighed again. It's because of the true dragon vein. What? True dragon vein? This gave me a fright. How could it be related to the true dragon's vein? Did the Metaphysics Society find out about the Mount Tai stone? I looked at Yang Kaichen and carefully asked him, what's the situation with the true dragon vein? Yang Kaichen was stunned and asked, you don't know? Then he knocked his head and smiled. It's my fault. Although you're in the Geomaster realm, you don't know much about the Metaphysics Society. I forgot to tell you before. Then Yang Kaichen told me about the Metaphysics Society and the True Dragon's Vein. It turned out that the Metaphysics Association had a True Dragon's Vein, just like other famous Taoist sections. It was said that it was discovered by the Metaphysics Association's old president, Li Liguang. This was also the reason why feng shui masters from all over the world were so eager to join the Metaphysics Association. As long as a member of the Metaphysics Association was able to pass the test after reaching the Earthmaster realm, they would have the opportunity to go to the headquarters of the Metaphysics Association to see the true dragon vein and break through to the dragon-seeking realm. After he said that, I understood. There were so many people in the Metaphysics Association that had broken through to this seeking dragon realm. If there wasn't a true dragon's vein, it would be impossible. As for why Xie Tianyu targeted me, it was because he was the only person in the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association who had a chance of breaking through to the dragon-seeking realm. I suddenly appeared just as I was about to go to the headquarters of the Metaphysics Association to see the true dragon vein. The Shenzhen Metaphysics Society only had one quota to observe the true dragon vein. If I didn't appear, the quota would definitely be Xie Tianyu's. But after I appeared, a variable appeared. That was why Xie Tianyu purposely targeted me. After knowing the reason, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I only joined the Metaphysics Association to seek refuge. Who knew that there would be such a thing? After thinking for a while, I asked Yang Kaichen, if I give up on the quota, can I be promoted to the director position? According to my calculations, the Jade Bracelet could support me to advance to the next realm after absorbing the dragon energy from the Mount Tai stone. There is no need for me to fight for the quota. Yang Kaichen shook his head. Now that Chairman Su knows that you have a grudge with the Miao people, even if you give up on the quota, I'm afraid that he won't let you be promoted to the director position so easily. Also, you have to think carefully. The situation with the Miao people is still uncertain, so they might not come looking for you. The opportunity to observe the true dragon vein is a once-in-a-blue-moon opportunity. In the Earthmaster realm, the younger one is the higher the chance of breaking through. Also, the true dragon vein of the Metaphysics Association is open once every 3 years. If you delay this time, you will have to wait for another 3 years to get the quota. After hearing his words, I felt a little gloomy. I didn't care about the true dragon vein, but it seemed that there was no hope for me to be promoted to the director position. Xie Tianyu had completely cut off my path of retreat. Even if I didn't fight with him, I wouldn't be able to get the protection of the Metaphysics Association. My mind was in a mess. Yang Kaichen said, although there's no chance for me to be promoted to the director position, Chairman Su still wants me to go and meet him. Perhaps there's still a chance. I knew that he was trying to comfort me. I smiled wryly and nodded. When is it? Yang Kaichen told me that it was tomorrow afternoon. He would come and pick me up then. Since my mind was gloomy, I didn't want to continue the conversation. Seeing that, Yang Kaichen bid farewell and left. After he left, I sat alone in the room and thought for a long time. I couldn't think of any other way, so I closed my eyes and continued to stabilize the Tao energy in my body. When others couldn't be relied on, I could only rely on myself. I hoped that the that Zhao Ying had mentioned would give me more time. When I advanced to the next realm, perhaps I would have the ability to resist. The next afternoon, Yang Kaichen came to pick me up, and we went to the Metaphysics Association for the second time. Since I was already a member of the Metaphysics Association, I didn't encounter any obstacles this time, and I smoothly reached the top floor. As soon as I got out of the elevator, I saw that the Mount Tai stone on the top floor was covered with a red cloth. I couldn't see what was going on inside. I pretended not to know and asked Yang Kaichun what happened. He shook his head and said indifferently, "I heard that there's a small problem with the Mount Tai stone. I'm not sure about the details since no one informed me." I nodded. I guess that the people of the Metaphysics Association didn't know the reason, so they didn't tell anyone. It made sense. If it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have believed that something could absorb the dragon vein chi. The people of the Metaphysics Association probably didn't think about this either. After asking, I didn't want to arouse suspicion and followed Yang Kaichun to Chairman Su's office. Before I reached Chairman Su's office, I bumped into Xie Tianyu. He stood in the hallway and seemed to be waiting for me. After seeing Yang Kaichun and I appear, he sneered coldly. He walked to my side and said, "Zhou Yi, you just joined the Metaphysics Association and you already want to snatch the spot to observe the true dragon's veins. Aren't you a little too ambitious? Let me give you a piece of advice. The Shenzhen Metaphysics Association isn't a place you can mess around. You'd better behave yourself and not let your imagination run wild. Otherwise, I won't mind teaching you how to behave." After he said that, he looked at me arrogantly with a face full of disdain. I wasn't angered by his words. I just felt that it was strange. This guy was older than me, so how could he be so unsophisticated? Not only did he ruin my plans behind my back, but he actually told me in person. Did he take the wrong medicine? I couldn't be bothered with him. I pointed to the front and said to him, "Please make way. I want to go to Chairman Su's office." "Ha!" Xie Tianyu suddenly laughed and looked at me mockingly. "Do you think that he will change his mind after seeing Chairman Su? You're too naive. Also, let me tell you, Chairman Su didn't just call you, he also informed me." With that, he arrogantly walked to Chairman Su's office and knocked on the door. Yang Kaichun and I looked at each other. We didn't know what was going on. We could only bitterly smile and follow Xie Tianyu into Chairman Su's office. Chairman Su was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was tall, slender, and had a thin face with long hair. If I saw him in a bar, I would definitely think of him as a handsome uncle who played rock and roll. After seeing us come in, Chairman Su smiled and pointed to the sofa, arranging for us to sit down. After exchanging greetings, Chairman Su turned to look at me and asked with a smile, "You're Zhou Yi, right? It's not easy for you to have such a cultivation at such a young age." I naturally didn't dare to be arrogant and repeatedly praised him. Chairman Su waved his hand and said, "Even when I was your age, my cultivation wasn't as good as yours, so you don't have to be humble. However, there's something I don't understand, so I want to ask you." I was surprised and immediately said, "What is it?" "Chairman Su, please ask." Chairman Su slightly squinted his eyes and stared at me. After a feng shui master reaches the earth master realm, the cultivation speed of drawing qi as one's finger is different according to their talent. However, after reaching this realm, it's extremely difficult to advance further. It's useless no matter how good your talent is. If you can't find a true dragon vein to observe, you can only rely on time to slowly accumulate. I was a little confused by his words and didn't know what he meant. However, I didn't say anything and continued to listen to him. Chairman Su's eyes narrowed even more and continued to ask, "So I'm very curious. You shouldn't have observed a true dragon vein, but you're already close to the realm of drawing qi as one. Why is that?" Chapter 82. I raised my head to look at Chairman Su, but other than a gloomy expression, I couldn't see anything else. At that moment, my heart raced as I thought of many possibilities, but in the end, I felt that Chairman Su didn't see through it. At most, he was suspicious of me because the time I came to the branch coincided with the time of Mount Taisher's accident. Under such circumstances, if I were to lose my composure, I would give myself away. After staying silent for a while, I said to Chairman Su, "This is related to a strange experience that I had previously. I originally planned to tell Chairman Su about it, but I didn't expect you to ask first. But because this is an important matter, I want to tell you alone." "Oh." Chairman Su raised his eyelids and didn't say anything. Xie Tianyu, who was at the side, probably thought that I was going to use some method to snatch his spot, so he anxiously said, "What do you have to say behind our backs?" I didn't pay attention to him and just looked at Chairman Su. After staying silent for a while, Chairman Su waved his hand and asked the others to wait at the door. Although Xie Tianyu was unwilling, since Chairman Su had spoken, he could only helplessly follow Yang Kai-chen out. However, before he left, he glared at me with a sinister expression, as if he wanted to threaten me. I smiled at him and didn't care about him at all. Although this fellow was already in the Earth Master realm, he probably grew up under the protection of others and was spoiled rotten. He didn't have any EQ, so there was nothing to worry about. After they all left, Chairman Su faintly opened his mouth and said to me, "Can you speak now?" I nodded and thought about my words before saying to him, "The reason why my Dao Qi increased so much is because I once found a true dragon's vein." "What?" President Su immediately sat up from his chair, and his previously calm expression changed drastically. It seemed that he was shocked by this news and didn't say anything for a long time. After staying silent for a while, he suddenly reacted and asked me hastily, "Is this true?" The value of a true dragon vein wasn't something that Mount Taisher could compare to. The entire Metaphysics Association only had one true dragon vein, so it was no wonder that Chairman Su lost his composure. I nodded and said, "Of course." On the way to the Fire God Temple, the signs of the true dragon vein were very obvious. It was definitely reasonable to say that they had found the true dragon vein there. Even though I admitted to it, President Su didn't get more excited. Instead, his expression became doubtful. "Since you found the true dragon vein, why didn't your cultivation break through to the dragon-seeking realm?" I smiled wryly and shook my head. This is the strange experience I was talking about. At that time, I coincidentally found the true dragon vein. I excitedly went over to absorb the dragon energy into my body. I thought that I would definitely be able to break through, but who knew that the true dragon vein would only stay there for a day? When I went over the next day, the true dragon vein had actually disappeared. "What?" President Su was startled by my words. He squinted his eyes and pondered for a moment. His face darkened as he said, "The true dragon's vein only lasted for a day and then suddenly disappeared? Don't lie to me." I hastily replied, "Of course I won't speak nonsense." At that time, I was also extremely astonished. I stayed there for many days and looked everywhere, but I couldn't find the true dragon's vein. What's even weirder was that the ancestral dragon's vein and the embryonic dragon's vein that extended from the true dragon's vein were still there. Only the core true dragon's vein had disappeared. According to my conjecture, something must have happened. With my cultivation, I wasn't able to see through it. Thus, after joining the Metaphysics Association, I originally wanted to spread the news and let the seniors with profound cultivation take a look. Perhaps they might be able to find the true dragon's vein again. In reality, the true dragon's vein was in the Fire God Temple. If the Fire God Temple wasn't found, it would be impossible to find the true dragon's vein. I reckon that I said that to give President Su a false impression. I wanted him to think that the true dragon's vein was hidden due to some unforeseen event. As long as someone with slightly higher cultivation went over, they might be able to find it. After hearing what I said, President Su's expression finally became better. He nodded and said, "Since the ancestral dragon's vein and the embryonic dragon's vein are still there, it proves that the true dragon's vein really existed. It's great that you have such intentions. As long as you can prove what you said, I can recommend you to be the vice president of our Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. Moreover, after reporting it, you will definitely get a spot to observe the true dragon's vein." After hearing what he said, I was instantly elated. The reason why I told him this news was because I wanted to distance myself from the changes in the Mount Tai stone. On the other hand, I wanted to make an exchange of benefits. I wanted to use this news to exchange for President Su's protection. President Su was worthy of being the leader of the association. He understood my intentions so quickly and gave me a promise. Although he didn't directly promise to help me, his recommendation for me to be promoted to the vice president obviously had this intention. Originally, I wanted to decline the spot to observe the true dragon's vein. However, after thinking about it, I was going to break through to the dragon-seeking realm sooner or later. If I didn't observe the true dragon's vein, it would be hard to explain myself. Thus, I didn't decline and just smiled in agreement. Afterwards, I wrote down the exact location of the fire god temple. However, it was a primitive forest with few people. There were many places that didn't have names, so I had to draw out a map. When I first went there, although Director Liu didn't give me the map, feng shui masters were very sensitive to geography. After walking back and forth a few times, I could roughly draw out the route. As I sat there earnestly drawing the map, I inadvertently raised my head and saw that President Su was looking at me without blinking. His face was filled with excitement, greed, and even a trace of viciousness. I was suddenly startled. The true dragon's vein was very important. Moreover, its value was too high. Wasn't it a bit inappropriate to tell President Su so rashly? If he didn't want to report it to the Metaphysics Association and wanted to keep it for himself, would he kill me later to keep it a secret? Although I was young and didn't have much experience, the people in the metaphysics world that I had interacted with, such as Deng Ming and Zhao Yongquan, were all vicious and merciless people. For their own benefits, they would definitely do anything. Seeing President Su's expression, I couldn't help but be on guard. Just as I was stunned, President Su noticed my abnormality. He anxiously asked me, "Why did you stop drawing?" The terrain there is very complicated. I don't remember some of the routes clearly. I casually answered him, lowered my head, and continued to draw the route. Although I was suspicious, I had already told him about it. There was no room for regret, so I could only brace myself and continue to draw. However, I was still careful and didn't draw the route that clearly. This way, when the time came to find it, I would most likely have to lead the way. After I finished drawing the map, I gave it to President Su. He was also a feng shui master, and his cultivation was much higher than mine. He hastily picked it up and looked at it. After a while, he frowned and asked me, "Why is the route so simple? There are a few places that aren't connected." I smiled and explained, "It's a primitive forest. There are no roads, only small paths like the Beast Trail and Canyon. Moreover, they aren't fixed. If it rains, they might change their route. That's why it's impossible to draw this part of the route. Also, there are some extremely strange places along the way. I experienced great danger and narrowly escaped death to reach that place. The situation is rather complicated. When it's time to set out, I will tell you the details." I didn't say these words carelessly. On the way to the Fire God Temple, there were places like the Yellow Springs River and the Departed Soul Valley. Even with President Su's strength, it would be difficult for him to pass through them alone. I purposely didn't say these places out loud to give myself a way out. I didn't know if President Su had seen through my thoughts or not. After staring at me for a while, he put away the map and told me, "Today, I'll be promoted to a director. After this matter is confirmed, I'll be promoted to vice president." I let out a sigh of relief. It didn't matter if he wanted to give me some benefits or not. At least for this period of time, my safety was guaranteed. When I left the Metaphysics Society, I met Xie Tianyu again. He seemed to know that I had been promoted to a director. When he saw my expression, he was furious. However, I was thinking about President Su's matter, so I didn't bother with him and left. Even though I had made preparations, in reality, after I told him the location of the Fire God Temple, the rest of the route wasn't important. It was just a matter of time. As long as he had the heart, he would definitely be able to find it. If President Su really wanted to keep this information to himself, the possibility of him killing me was quite high. After I returned, I was especially careful. I didn't even sleep at night. Instead, I sat cross-legged on the bed and stabilized the Tao energy in my body while being on guard. Chapter 83. As a geomaster, my eyes and ears were sharper than ordinary people's. Moreover, the hotel's corridor was spacious, so the sound of footsteps could be easily heard. I immediately heard the footsteps outside the door. Although it was far from my room, I was still vigilant. I carefully got off the bed and tiptoed to the door. I listened carefully to the movements outside. The person outside the door seemed to be walking very slowly. His footsteps echoed once every 1 or 2 seconds, but he didn't stop. He was getting closer and closer to me. Eventually, the footsteps disappeared when he reached my door. I panicked. At first, I was just suspicious. But now, I was sure that the person outside the door was here to trouble me. Since there was only one door between us, I could vaguely feel the thick doubt energy of the person outside. Is it President Sue? Or is it the mother that Zhao mentioned? Currently, there were only 2 people who could cause trouble for me. I wasn't sure when Zhao Ying's Ma would return to find me, but if President Sue really wanted to silence me, he would definitely do it as soon as possible. Based on the timing, it was highly likely that it would be President Sue. He was in existence even stronger than Zhao Yongkuan. If it was him, I wouldn't be able to resist him. The only thing I could rely on was the many ghosts in the jade bracelet. I held the jade bracelet tightly, my eyes sinister. I had made a deal with Tong Tong. If I met any danger, I just had to shout, "Release," and she would release the ghosts. If the person outside the door dared to break the door, I would release all the ghosts. If so many ghosts appeared in the downtown area, no one knew how serious the consequences would be. However, compared to other people's lives, my life was more important. That was why I didn't hesitate. However, to my surprise, after the footsteps stopped in front of my door, they didn't move again. They didn't knock on the door, nor did they break in. If I didn't feel the faint breathing and Dao Qi, I wouldn't have known that there was someone outside the door. The more one didn't act, the more anxious they became. Since I was very nervous, my breathing became heavy. Although I tried my best to control it, it didn't have much effect. I tightened my grip on the jade bracelet. If there was even the slightest movement, I would take action immediately. However, what happened next exceeded my expectations. The faint breathing and Dao Qi fluctuations outside the door suddenly disappeared. What was going on? Did the person outside leave? Why was there no movement at all? I was dumbfounded. I held my breath and waited for a long time, but nothing happened. Eventually, I carefully opened the door and looked outside. The corridor was empty under the bright light. There was no one there. Puzzled, I closed the door and returned. I sat there puzzled. The sound of footsteps, the breathing, and the fluctuation of Dao Qi were definitely not my illusion. But why did the person outside the door suddenly disappear? If this person was President Sue, did he suddenly change his mind after standing outside the door for a long time? If it wasn't President Sue, then who could it be? He thought about it for a long time, but the result was still a mess. He couldn't understand it at all. That night, I didn't sleep and just sat there until the sun rose. Everything was normal after that. The person didn't appear again. After the sun rose, I received a call from President Sue. He told me that he had reported to the Metaphysics Society's headquarters that I had found the true dragon's vein. The headquarters would send someone to investigate. He asked me not to divulge this information during this time. President Sue's words were normal, and I didn't see anything strange. Moreover, since he had reported to the headquarters, I didn't need to worry about him having the intention to kill me to keep my mouth shut anymore. After telling me this, President Sue told me that in 1 week, the Guangdong Province Metaphysics Conference would be held. At this conference, the Feng Shui master of the Seeking Dragon Realm would be tested. Those who passed the test would be qualified to go to the Metaphysics Society's headquarters to observe the true dragon's vein. Now that I was a member of the board, I had the right to participate in the conference. After explaining the situation, he told me that I hadn't confirmed the fact that I had found the true dragon's vein yet. The reward for observing the true dragon's vein couldn't be fulfilled yet. Moreover, the true dragon's vein only appeared once every 3 years. If I missed this opportunity, even if the reward was confirmed, I would have to wait for another 3 years. I didn't really care about this problem. It didn't matter whether it was now or 3 years later. However, if I relied on the true dragon's vein's chi from the jade bracelet, I would be able to break through in a few months. If I didn't go this time, it wouldn't be easy to hide it. I pondered and didn't make up my mind. President Su seemed to be impatient. He didn't wait for my answer and directly told me, if I decide to go, I should go to the Metaphysics Society today to register. If I don't go today, it will be considered that I have given up this opportunity. After hanging up, I thought for a while and decided to register. No matter if I could get the quota or not, it wouldn't be bad to go to the conference. Ever since I had started my career, I had always acted alone. Geomancy experts needed to learn from other experts. It wouldn't be bad to interact with other geomancy experts. After making up my mind, I tidied up a little before leaving. At the Earthmaster realm, not sleeping for one night didn't affect me much. The abundant Tao energy in my body was enough to make up for my lack of mental power. When I was about to eat breakfast, I received a call from Yang Kai-chen. He told me the same thing and asked me if I wanted to register. When he knew I was going, he insisted on coming to pick me up. I couldn't reject him, so I agreed. After hanging up, I went to a nearby breakfast shop to eat while waiting for Yang Kai-chen. However, Yang Kai-chen didn't show up even after I'd finished my breakfast. Feeling helpless, I called him back to ask about the situation. However, the call went through for a long time, and Yang Kai-chen didn't pick up his call. I called him a few times, but it was still the same. Seeing that it was getting late, I was worried that I would miss the registration time, so I rushed to the Metaphysics Society. When I arrived at the Metaphysics Society, I met Xie Tianyu and a group of people walking out from the side before I could enter the building. He quickly walked in front of me and looked at me angrily. I knew you had ulterior motives. You actually dared to register today. Let me tell you, Yang Kaiken's lackey is in a hospital. If you dare to walk through this door, I will also send you to the hospital. I was stunned, then anger surged out from my heart. No wonder Yang Kai-chen lost contact after making the call. It was his doing. I coldly looked at him. As a geomancy expert, don't you think it's too much to make a move on an ordinary geomancy expert? Xie Tianyu chuckled and said disdainfully, "This is a society where the weak are prey to the strong." He knows that he's an ordinary geomancy expert, but he still dares to meddle in our business. He deserves to be taught a lesson. I also smiled at him. But I'm not an ordinary geomancy expert. If you don't let me walk through the door, where do you get your confidence from? Hearing my words, Xie Tianyu laughed out loud. He pointed at the people behind him and arrogantly said to me, "I brought 12 people, and 4 of them are council members. They are in the same realm as us. Can't you see that? You actually dare to ask me where I get my confidence from? I want to ask you, you're still so calm. Where do you get your confidence from? I'll give you 10 seconds. If you don't scram, I'll get someone to help you." I shook my head. Not only was this person not shrewd, but he also had a low EQ and IQ. An ordinary geomancy expert in the dragon-seeking realm could only draw chi like a finger. The people that Xie Tianyu brought were all old geomancy experts. Although their Dao Chi might have increased after a long time, it was still too far away from my current realm of drawing chi like a finger. Even if they worked together, it wouldn't be a threat. Without waiting for me to speak, Xie Tianyu's sinister expression completely exploded. He pointed at me and ordered the others to attack me. Then, the middle-aged men behind him each took out a yellow talisman and walked towards me. Seeing this scene, Xie Tianyu revealed a complacent smile. Chapter 84. The 4 directors of the Metaphysics Society that Xie Tianyu had brought with him walked over to me. At the same time, the yellow talismans in their hands gathered Dao energy and threw them at me. They were all Fierce Yang talismans. The Fierce Yang talisman, as the name suggested, was a talisman that gathered Yang energy. Once the Yang energy gathered to a certain degree, it would become very violent. It could create a raging fire out of thin air. If too much Dao energy was poured into it, it could even explode. It was like a small grenade. When used against ghosts and spirits, it was extremely powerful. If used against humans, the damage could not be underestimated. It was the most common talisman used by feng shui masters in battles. However, I didn't wait for the 4 talismans to reach me. I took out 4 talismans and threw them at them. They accurately collided with the talismans that they had thrown at me. The gathering Een talisman could gather dense Een energy. It was usually used to arrange special formations or to deal with strange Yang ghosts. Seeing my actions, Xie Tianyu didn't even have time to laugh. He gaped and pointed at me in shock. He stammered, How could you use 4 talismans at once? Normally, a feng shui master at the dragon-seeking realm would use up all the energy in their body to make 2 talismans. Using talismans 3 to 5 times wouldn't be a problem. However, that was 1 talisman at a time, unlike me, who could use so many at once. If I wanted to use 4 talismans at the same time, I had to surpass the dragon-seeking realm. The reason why I could use them now was that I wasn't far from the pressure point realm. On the other hand, when I absorbed the dragon energy from the jade bracelet, I had gathered a large amount of Tao energy. Although it hadn't completely stabilized and turned into my cultivation, I could still use it. In simpler terms, the stabilized Tao energy had become my cultivation and could be used repeatedly. The unstable Tao energy was a one-time consumable. It wasn't a problem to use it, but it would be gone after it was used. Previously, President Su's strength was higher than mine, so he could see through my cultivation. However, Xie Tianyu's strength wasn't as strong as mine, so he thought that I was just a normal feng shui master at the dragon-seeking realm. After the 8 talismans collided in the air, Yin and Yang collided. In an instant, the 4 fierce Yang talismans lost their light and fell to the ground, turning into ordinary yellow paper. Although the radiance of the 4 Yin gathering talismans had faded a lot, their power hadn't disappeared. They still flew toward the 4 people. Almost in an instant, the 4 of them were entangled by the Yin Qi. Their faces revealed a greenish-black color as they clutched their lungs and coughed. Although Xie Tianyu was not affected by the Yin gathering talisman, his face was ashen. He was shocked and angry. After a while, the 4 directors of the Metaphysics Association used their own methods to alleviate the pain. They stood there and looked at me. Their faces were filled with fear. It seemed that they didn't dare to attack me anymore. At this time, Xie Tianyu's eyes suddenly lit up, and he shouted at the 4 directors. He used 4 talismans at the same time, so the Taoist Qi in his body must be exhausted. Even if it is not empty, I don't think he has so many talismans in his hands. Quickly use talismans to deal with him. I will compensate you twice the amount of talismans you used later. As soon as he said that, he took out a yellow talisman and threw it at me. After listening to him, the 4 council members' frightened faces vanished. They exchanged looks and took out their yellow talismans, throwing them at me. I glanced at Xie Tianyu. Talismans weren't cheap, even for a feng shui master. He promised to compensate us twice the amount of talismans we used. He was really rich. Although the 4 directors had different degrees of injuries, they had thrown 5 talismans at me at the same time. Their power was more than twice as strong as before. Although the Tao energy in my body was still abundant, and I had made quite a few talismans while I was waiting for Zhao Ying and Wang Yongjun's factory dormitory, so I had plenty of talismans at the moment. However, using 5 talismans at the same time was not enough for me. After thinking for a while, I took out 4 more Een gathering talismans. However, I didn't throw them out like before. I held them in my hand and waited for the 5 talismans to reach me. Then I used my Taoist Qi to activate the 4 Een gathering talismans. At the same time, I discreetly contacted Tong Tong. I didn't ask her to show herself, but to send some Een energy from her jade bracelet. After I had activated the Een gathering talismans, the others wouldn't be able to see it. The 5 talismans flew toward me at the same time. The light on the talismans changed, and a tremendous amount of explosive Yang energy shrouded me in just a blink of an eye. Unfortunately, the exploding Yang energy was just a paper tiger. In the next second, the Een energy I had released collided with it, and it vanished. This time, Xie Tianyu's face changed. He pointed at me. His lips trembled, but he couldn't utter a word. He didn't talk, but I had something to say. I took out another talisman. This time, it wasn't an Een gathering talisman, but a scorching Yang talisman. I looked at Xie Tianyu and sneered. What? Did you break your hand just like that? Didn't you say that you wouldn't let me through the door? And you guys. I turned to look at the four directors of the Metaphysics Society and continued. As directors of the Metaphysics Society, you didn't help your colleagues. Instead, you gathered together to bully your colleagues. Your behavior is a disgrace to the Metaphysics Society. The four people's faces were unnatural. They turned to the side and didn't dare to look at me. I didn't bother with them anymore. I turned around and walked towards Sietienyu. While walking, I said to him, I know you won the quota for the Metaphysics Society. Whether you believe it or not, I didn't want to compete with you. Even though you've been rude to me, I didn't take it to heart. However, you've crossed the line. You didn't even let go of an ordinary geomancy master like Yang Kai-Chin. Today, you even tried to force yourself on me. As I approached him, Sietienyu's face was full of fear. He sat on the ground, looking very distressed. I looked at him and couldn't help but shake my head. He had only used the talisman once, so he definitely had some strength left. Unfortunately, he didn't have any courage left. He was completely frightened by me and didn't have any thoughts of resisting. After walking in front of him, I looked down at him and said, when a dog is chewing on a bone, if a person walks too close to it, the dog will definitely bark at the person. Do you know the reason? Sietienyu shook his head blankly. I bent down and looked at him with even more disdain. Because the dog thinks that when a person comes close to it, it's going to snatch its bone. Of course, a person won't snatch a dog's bone. However, if the dog barks twice, then that's fine. If it dares to bite someone, then it's destined that it won't be able to eat the bone. Then, I threw the talisman in my hand at him and stood up. I didn't look at him anymore and walked into the Metaphysics Society. As I walked, I said, since you've opened your mouth to bite someone, then the quota for the Metaphysics Society is mine. When I entered the Metaphysics Society, Sietienyu let out a blood-curdling scream. Then, his body started to burn. The other directors quickly ran over and used talismans to help him dissolve the explosive yang energy around him. I smiled and threw this matter to the back of my mind. I went to the top floor and went to Chairman Su's office. After entering, Chairman Su was standing by the window. He turned around and glanced at me faintly. Why did you decide to sign up again? I smiled and said, participating in the exchange will allow me to broaden my horizons. Chairman Su didn't say anything else and handed me a form. After I filled it up, he told me that the exchange would be held in a week at the Metaphysics Society's branch in Shenzhen. Originally, I thought that I would have to go to Guangzhou. I didn't think that it would be held in Shenzhen. Before I left, Chairman Su looked at me with a profound gaze and said, I won't pursue the matter between you and Sietienyu. However, Sietienyu's power is much weaker than yours. In this exchange, I hope that you can represent our Shenzhen branch and take back the honor of being the champion. The champion of the previous exchange was in our branch. That's why we're holding it here. Moreover, we also got the quota to observe the true dragon vein. I hope that you can maintain our excellent results. I was stunned. It wasn't because Chairman Su had high hopes for me, but because of his tone. It seemed that the conflict between me and Sietienyu was caused by me. Chapter 85. By the time I left the Metaphysics Society, Sietienyu and the others had already disappeared. I didn't go back to the hotel, but called Yang Kai-Chin again. This time, the call finally went through. After I asked for the hospital he was in, I immediately rushed over. When I arrived at the ward, Yang Kai-Chin was weakly lying on the bed. His head was wrapped in a thick bandage. When he saw me, he struggled to sit up and anxiously asked me, Did you register today? Did Sietienyu look for you? I quickly went over and helped him lie down. I smiled and told him, I successfully registered. Yang Kai-Chin let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, It's good that you registered. You are talented and have a bright future ahead of you. No matter what, registering and obtaining the qualifications for the exam is the most important thing. After saying that, he earnestly advised me, As for the other things, you don't have to worry about it. People like Sietienyu won't amount to anything. You don't have to lower yourself to his level. When your cultivation is higher than him in the future, a clown like him won't be a problem anymore. I couldn't help but bitterly smile. He was originally implicated by me and got into this mess. I didn't think that he would comfort me before I even comforted him. Don't worry. Of course, I won't lower myself to his level. I won't find trouble with him in the future either. I said with a smile and added, after all, I already taught him a lesson. Yang Kaiken's face was originally gratified when he heard my words, but when he heard the last sentence, he immediately smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that I spoke too late." I roughly told him what happened before and said without a care, "This kind of person can only be forced. If you keep tolerating him, he will only take a mile when you give him an inch. He will only become obedient after being taught a lesson." Yang Kaichen didn't agree with my point of view. He sighed and said, "Xie Tianyu's family situation isn't normal. He is from a feng shui family. Although the Xie family isn't a super family with a true dragon vein, their strength shouldn't be underestimated. You should be more careful in the future." I was stunned, but this situation wasn't out of my expectations. After all, he looked rich and overbearing and could casually order 4 directors of the Metaphysics Society. His background definitely wasn't ordinary. One doesn't itch when there are too many lice, and one doesn't worry when there are too many debts. I had a lot of troubles recently, so of course, I wouldn't care about Xie Tianyu. I casually said a few words and changed the topic. On the 5th day after I left the hospital, I received President Su's notice that the Metaphysics Society's headquarters had come and asked me to meet them. When I arrived at the Metaphysics Association, President Su was already waiting for me. Standing next to him were 3 middle-aged men who were about the same age as President Su. According to President Su's introduction, among the 3 of them, there was a tall and skinny man named Yang Shilong. He was the vice president of the Metaphysics Society. After listening to President Su's words, I was shocked. I didn't expect that the Metaphysics Union would send a vice president. President Su was already in existence at the peak of the Earth Master Realm. What kind of cultivation would the vice president of the Metaphysics Union have? Could it be the legendary Celestial Master? I couldn't help but lift my head to look at him. Unfortunately, the gap between our cultivation bases was too big. I couldn't tell his realm. I could only feel that he was stronger than President Su. Besides Vice President Yang, there were 2 other fat and skinny middle-aged men called Lu Zheng and Fang Xing. They were the directors of the Metaphysics Society's headquarters. I looked at them. Their strength shouldn't be weaker than President Su's. After the introductions, the vice president called Yang Shilong asked me with a serious face, "Let me confirm with you again. Is the true dragon vein fake?" I was about to reply when the fat middle-aged man called Fang Xing interrupted. "You little doll, think carefully before you reply. If we came here for nothing, the consequences will be severe." I smiled and replied without hesitation, "You don't need to think about it. What I said is absolutely true. There's no falsehood in it." "Good." Yang Shilong couldn't help but clap and said loudly, "If we can really find the true dragon vein, the Metaphysics Society won't treat you badly. The president already told me that if we succeed, you can follow me back to the headquarters. If you don't have a master, the president can take you in as his last disciple. If you have a master and don't want one, the president can guarantee that he can help you advance to the glory of Knowledge Realm." Hearing his conditions, I was excited. I didn't care about being his disciple, but the guarantee that I could advance to the glory of Knowledge Realm was too tempting. The further I walked on the path of a feng shui master, the more dangerous the road ahead would be. Every step was incomparably difficult, not to mention the guarantee that I could advance to a few realms. Unfortunately, I knew that they definitely wouldn't be able to find the true dragon vein. Even if they had a way to get the Fire God Temple out, the mysterious stone man wouldn't let them get what they wanted. Thus, all these promises were just flowers in the mirror and the moon in the water. They were destined to be unfulfilled. After being excited for a while, I became indifferent. Originally, according to the Metaphysics Society's intention, I was to immediately bring them to the Fire God Temple. However, after I said that the gathering was about to start and I decided to participate, Yang Shilong was rather open-minded. He smiled and said that he could let me participate in the gathering first. It wouldn't be too late to search for the true dragon vein after the gathering ended. After getting my guarantee, Yang Shilong's attitude towards me was very friendly, giving me a good impression of him. His position was the highest, so after he made the decision, others naturally couldn't say anything. Thus, the time was set. In the next 2 days, Yang Shilong would contact me at the Metaphysics Society every day to chat. Sometimes, he would talk about the details of the true dragon vein, and other times I would ask him about some feng shui matters. The things recorded in the death scripture could be said to be all-encompassing and very comprehensive. However, there was a saying in feng shui, "The eyes of a deity are the feet of a woodcutter." Don't judge lightly until you've taken a step. It meant that no matter how good one's eyesight was, one couldn't be sure of many things without going through the field investigation. Yang Shilong had a lot of experience, and he knew almost everything about feng shui. He was even proficient in some divination and physiognomy. Although I didn't hear any enlightening words from him, I learned a lot about the details from him. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Metaphysics Society of Guangdong Province's gathering started on time. The wound on Yang Kaiken's head hadn't healed yet. Early in the morning, he drove to pick me up and said that we were going to the gathering together. Although the main purpose of the gathering was to select feng shui masters at the dragon-seeking realm to have a chance to observe the true dragon vein, and only qualified feng shui masters had signed up for the competition. However, it didn't restrict other people from participating. Thus, every gathering was a grand ceremony where feng shui masters from all over the country actively participated. I couldn't stop Yang Kaiken's enthusiasm, and I couldn't stop him. I simply let him be and went with him. The venue of the gathering was set up in an exhibition center not far from the Metaphysics Society. As soon as we arrived at the entrance, we saw all kinds of road signs. It was easy for us to enter the main hall. At this moment, the entrance of the main hall was filled with people. There were many elderly people lining up in front of us. They were all feng shui masters who had come to watch the competition. Yang Kaichen and I also went to stand in the back of the line. After a while, a beautiful receptionist came and smiled sweetly at me. "Mr. Zhou Yi, you're the feng shui master participating in this competition. Please follow me to the special area in the main hall." It turned out that the participants and the spectators were separated. I bid farewell to Yang Kaichen and followed the receptionist to the special area. On the way, I was curious as to how the receptionist recognized me. After asking, I learned that they had already recorded the photos of all the feng shui masters participating in the competition. As soon as they saw the participants, they directly brought them to the main hall. When we arrived at the special area for feng shui masters, I saw a seat with my name on it. At this moment, many people were already seated. I went to my seat and sat down. Not long after, I saw Xie Tianyu also appear. This guy used to have long hair, but now he had a crew cut. I guess it was burned by the fierce yang talisman I used that day. I didn't find it strange. The rules of the competition were that all the qualified feng shui masters in each city could participate. In the end, there would only be 10 spots. Since the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association won the last competition, they had a guaranteed spot this time. In other words, no matter what the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association's final ranking was, even if they weren't in the top 10, as long as they ranked first in the branch, they would get a spot. Originally, if Xie Tianyu was the only one participating, he would definitely get a spot. But now that I was here, as long as his ranking was lower than mine, this spot would be mine. I don't know if President Su knew about the conflict between me and Xie Tianyu. We were clearly from the same branch, but our seats weren't together. However, this was also good. It prevented him from playing any more tricks on me. Just as I was looking around, a voice suddenly came from beside me. "Little brother, do you still remember me?" I turned around and saw an unfamiliar young man sitting next to me. He was handsome and wore elegant clothes. He was smiling at me, but his smile looked a little frivolous. I frowned and was about to ask him who he was when I suddenly remembered the time when I had just entered the university. I had seen this person before. He was the swindler I had met on the plane. Chapter 86. I remember that you're that. Nangong? This fellow had given me his business card. Moreover, his name was very unique. I recalled his name after thinking for a while. "Little brother, you still remember me? I told you that we were fated to meet again and that we would definitely meet again. Today, We met again. Nangong smiled brightly and moved closer to me discreetly. It seemed that he was very familiar with me. I discreetly glanced at the seat behind him. It had the word Nangong written on it. It seemed that I had misunderstood him. This fellow wasn't a swindler. He should be a powerful feng shui master. It was probably because of his frivolous words and actions that I had misunderstood him. However, the strange thing was that I couldn't feel any fluctuation of Tao energy when I looked at him. I couldn't see his realm at all. The participants were all feng shui masters at the dragon-seeking realm. It was possible that Nangong's cultivation was higher than mine. However, when I looked at the vice president of the Metaphysics Association, Yang Shilong, I could faintly feel the fluctuation of Tao energy. Could it be that this fellow's cultivation was higher than Yang Shilong's? As soon as this thought popped up in my head, I shook my head. Even if this fellow had started cultivating in his mother's womb, it was impossible for his cultivation to be higher than Yang Shilong's. There must be some special reason. Nangong looked as if he wanted to befriend me. I couldn't refuse him, so I started chatting with him. According to him, he was representing the Metaphysics Association in Guangzhou. He didn't have any intention of observing the true dragon's vein. He just wanted to have some fun. I snorted in disdain. Among those who came to participate in the competition, apart from me, who didn't want to see the quota for the true dragon vein, this fellow really knew how to act noble. After chatting for a while, someone came from the platform and announced that the exchange was about to start. I smiled at Nangong. Then, I stopped talking and turned to look at the platform. Nangong laughed and moved closer to me. The last time I saw you, I noticed that your glabella was dark and the tip of your nose was red. I didn't expect that your face would be the same this time. Here, this is my business card. Remember to look for me if you need anything. Then, he shoved a business card into my hand and smiled meaningfully. Then, he turned around and didn't look at me anymore. I lowered my head and looked at the business card. It was the same as the one he had given me last time. There was no title or position, just a simple name and a number. I felt strange. The last time he had talked to me like that was fine. After all, I was still a fledgling university student. But now, I am a proper feng shui master. Usually, I read other people's fortune. Now, someone suddenly came to read my fortune. This feeling is very strange. What's more, what he said about a black labella and a red nose was simply nonsense. How could one read one's physiognomy like that? Last time, I treated him as a liar because of what he said. I didn't expect him to say the same thing this time. I really don't know how he managed to get into the Metaphysics Association. At this time, President Su, Yang Shilong, and the others appeared on the rostrum and gave a simple speech. Originally, the feng shui masters in the audience were very calm. But after President Su revealed Yang Shilong's identity, everyone was shocked and started to discuss it. The Metaphysics Association had branches in every province, but there was only one main branch. There were only a few vice presidents in the main branch. Normally, they were very rare. I didn't expect to see them here. The feng shui masters were all excited, but Yang Shilong's expression was calm. After saying a few words, he smiled and excused himself from the rostrum. He returned to his guest seat. Since the guest seat was behind the contestant seats, Yang Shilong passed by the contestant seats on his way back. He specially greeted me before walking back. All the feng shui masters' gazes were focused on Yang Shilong's body. This time, I was also the center of attention. Many people looked at me in disgust. Even the contestants from the metaphysics branch who weren't far from me were whispering to each other. Who is this person? He's actually so young. I think he's only around 20 years old. He actually came to participate in the dragon seizing tournament. Isn't it obvious? Didn't you see that even Vice President Yang from the main branch specially greeted him? His identity is definitely not simple. He must be a genius from a feng shui family. He was specially nurtured since he was young. It's not strange that he has such a cultivation. Hearing their discussion, I couldn't help but feel awkward. What feng shui family? What genius? It had nothing to do with me. My acquaintance with Yang Shilong was purely an exchange of benefits. I didn't expect that it would lead to such a misunderstanding. Even Xie Tianyu turned his head and looked at me in surprise. The resentment in his eyes had disappeared and was replaced by a trace of fear. Seeing this scene, I couldn't help but smile. It seemed that he had also misunderstood that I had some background. This was also good. This fellow wouldn't do anything to disgust me in the future. After everyone discussed for a while, President Su, who was on the rostrum, restored the silence. Afterwards, he started to invite famous feng shui masters to give a speech. The first person to give a speech was a white-haired old man with a hunched back. As soon as he came up, the feng shui masters in the audience cheered. I could see that this old man was quite popular among the feng shui masters. At first, I thought that he was some kind of expert. However, after he introduced himself, I found out that he was just an ordinary member of the Metaphysics Association in Meizhou City. If he was just an ordinary member, he wouldn't be able to reach the Earth Master realm. Moreover, judging from his age, he wouldn't be able to break through in this lifetime. I felt strange. He was just an ordinary feng shui master. How could he attract such a big applause? Out of curiosity, I carefully listened to his speech. From his speech, I learned that although he was just an ordinary geomancy master, he had entered this profession when he was a teenager. He had been fixing tombs for people's residences, and he had been doing this for 70 years. After so many years, not only had he made a name for himself among the people, but his knowledge of feng shui was also very solid. His experience and knowledge were unparalleled. After listening to his speech, I slowly discovered a truth. Although feng shui masters had different realms, their foundation was still the knowledge of feng shui. Their realms depended on their talents and opportunities. Everyone had different fortunes. However, what could make a feng shui master reach a higher level was still the knowledge of feng shui. For example, the selection to observe the true dragon vein. Although it was related to everyone's realm, the test wasn't a competition of talismans. It was a competition of feng shui knowledge. This old man was called Zhao Dingwu. Due to various reasons, he couldn't break through to the Earth Master realm. However, his disciples were all at the Earth Master realm. One of them was even a director of the National Metaphysics Association. Because of this, no one dared to look down on this old man, even though he was just an ordinary feng shui master. After the old man finished his speech, the audience applauded for a long time. Everyone stood up to show their respect to this old man. Then, other feng shui masters came up to give their speeches. Most of them were experienced feng shui masters. During their speeches, they talked about the typical feng shui cases they had encountered. From these cases, they explained the problems that feng shui would encounter in the practical application. Since I'd started to study feng shui, I didn't have much practical experience. Most of the time, I was just reading books. However, the speeches of these old men made up for my lack of experience. I learned a lot and benefited a lot. The entire morning was spent in continuous speeches. At noon, I want to go and find Yang Kai-chun, but Nangong shamelessly pulled me back. He wanted me to take him to taste the local delicacies. I was just a foreigner. How could I know the local delicacies? However, no matter how hard I tried to explain, Nangong shamelessly followed me and didn't want to leave. One shouldn't slap a smiling face. I had no choice but to take this burden to lunch. Then, we returned to the venue. In the afternoon, the Dragon Season competition, which was also the Dragon Season competition that people had been talking about, officially began. The feng shui masters who were watching the competition had taken their seats. Only the chairman of the Shenzhen branch of the Feng Shui Association, who was also Chairman Su, was left on the platform. He directed the attendants to bring us the information of the competition. Each of them had a small booklet. There were no words on the booklet. Instead, there were pictures of different landforms. Chapter 87. After briefly explaining the rules, Chairman Su added, "Only the 3 best geomancy maps will get points. The first geomancy map will get 3 points, the second will get 2 points, and the third will get 1 point. As for the other maps that aren't in the top 3, you won't get any points." Moreover, this was only the first round of the competition. After the end of the competition, according to the results of the competition, only the people with the most points will be able to enter the second round. The final ranking will be based on the combined results of the 2 rounds. After listening to the rules, I nodded. The rules were very reasonable. On one hand, it was a strict test of geomancy knowledge. On the other hand, it gave people many opportunities to reduce mistakes. It seemed that the Metaphysics Society had put in a lot of effort in setting up the rules. After Chairman Su finished speaking, all the participants picked up the maps in front of them and started to read them seriously. At the same time, the staff carried a large number of maps and distributed them to the geomancy masters. Although they weren't participating, they could gather their thoughts and give their answers to the questions. This way, they could improve together. After picking up the geomancy map, I flipped to the first one and frowned. It wasn't because the geomancy in the map was good, but because the geomancy was bad. The geomancy of a geomancy house was about the 4 aspects of dragon, cave, sand, and water. A good geomancy house usually had good geomancy in all 4 aspects. However, in the geomancy map in front of me, it was a barren land without sand, water, or a dragon vein. At first glance, I could tell that it was an ominous cave. Logically speaking, since it was a feng shui map that was issued after the examination, even if the feng shui wasn't very good, it should still be a place where people could be buried. However, the map in front of him was completely barren and couldn't be buried at all. Could it be that my geomancy wasn't right? Was there something else that I hadn't discovered? I lifted my head to look at the people around me. They all frowned and stared at the maps in their hands. I guess they had the same thought as me. After looking at the map for a long time, I confirmed that the first map didn't have good geomancy. After making up my mind, I started to look at the second map. At this time, I accidentally checked the time and found that I had spent 5 minutes on the first map, while Chairman Su had only given me half an hour. Since time was tight, I didn't have time to look at the rest of the maps in detail. The next few maps had bad geomancy. However, they were better than the first one and could be used to bury people. After flipping through more than 10 maps, I understood that the questions were deliberately made to show us some mediocre geomancy. After all, there weren't many places with good geomancy, and the chances of encountering one were low. Most of the time, the feng shui master could only choose one of the mediocre feng shui. It seemed that this was also a misunderstanding given by the person who set the question, causing people to spend too much time in the mediocre feng shui at the beginning, so that there was not enough time for the later part. Fortunately, I believed in myself and quickly continued to read. Otherwise, if I really tried to compete with the geomancy of the first few places, I might lose this competition. When I reached the 15th picture, my eyes brightened. I made a mark on this picture and continued to flip through it. Very quickly, when I saw the 26th picture, I stopped and frowned for a long time. Only then did I cautiously make a mark on this picture as well, and then continue to flip through it. This time, after looking through all 30 maps, I didn't find any good geomancy. Were there only 2 places with good geomancy, and the third place had to be chosen from the other places with mediocre geomancy? Could it be that there were only 2 places with good geomancy? It was possible. Generally speaking, the geomancy of the geomancy was similar. Choosing one place with better geomancy was a test of the geomancy master's ability. However, I had a feeling that it wasn't the case. After all, the requirement was to choose the 3 places with the best geomancy. With such a requirement, the geomancy of the 3 places had to be better than the others. Otherwise, the answer wouldn't be convincing enough. With doubts in my mind, I turned around and looked at the pictures again. This time, when I reached the 7th picture and was about to continue, I caught a glimpse of something that I had completely overlooked. I stared at the geomancy map for a long time. Finally, I smiled and ticked off this map. After I finished, the half-an-hour time limit was up. The staff came down and collected everyone's booklets. President Su was the host of the Dragon Seizing Tournament. However, the judges were the other 2 presidents of the metaphysics branch. Their surnames were Wang and Xie. After putting away the booklet, Chairman Wang and Chairman Xie quickly divided the booklet into several stacks. Then, the chubby Chairman Xie said to everyone with a smile, "I'm sure everyone has noticed that most of these 30 geomantic tombs are barren lands with barren hills and unruly rivers. They aren't places with good feng shui at all. I want to explain this point to everyone." He coughed and cleared his throat before continuing. In the geomancy of the geomancy map, the geomancy treasures can be found. It's nothing more than the four words Dragon Cave Sandwater. I'm sure everyone has already heard of some famous geomancy treasures. Perhaps you've even secretly noted them down. That's why we didn't choose those famous treasures. Instead, we chose places with dangerous geomancy. Of course, in these dangerous geomancy maps, there are 3 places with real geomancy treasures. They're hidden very deeply. Only by finding these 3 places will you be able to display the true level of a geomancy master and advance to the next stage of the tournament. After listening to him, I nodded. It was just as I had guessed. Everyone knew about the treasures of the geomancy. Only by finding the extraordinary treasures of the ordinary terrain could one be considered to have reached a higher level in geomancy. After President Xie finished speaking, President Wang stood up. He held a brand new booklet and said with a smile, "Next, I'll announce the 3 auspicious points. First, I'll announce the 3rd place." With that, he flipped the booklet to page 15 and faced the audience below the stage. Seeing the pattern on page 15, the geomancy masters under the stage exclaimed and whispered to each other. Many people looked annoyed. Obviously, they didn't see the geomancy of this place. Unlike the feng shui masters who were watching the competition, more than half of the participants looked very calm. Some of the less sophisticated ones already had smiles on their faces. After all, they were elites from all over the world. It seemed that this test was not difficult for them. After the answer was announced, President Wang continued to explain the geomancy of this place with a smile. From the pictures, this is just a simple piece of farmland. It's far from being beautiful. At first glance, it doesn't seem to be a good place to make a cave. However, please take a look at the small mound in the middle of the farmland. As soon as he finished speaking, one of the geomancy masters under the stage suddenly said loudly, "This mound looks like a koi carp. The farmland is perfectly round, and there's a circle of water around it. This is the shape of a golden basin for breeding carps. If the cave is formed at the mouth of the carp, it will ensure endless wealth for the future generations." President Wang nodded with a smile. This old man is right. This is indeed a golden basin for breeding carps. It's very rare. Unfortunately, there are no dragons on the mound, and the farmland is man-made. It's easy to be destroyed, and the geomancy is unstable. Therefore, we've ranked this picture 3rd. After he finished speaking, all the geomancy masters nodded slightly. It was obvious that they agreed with his point of view. Then, President Wang waved the booklet in his hand and continued, "There are a total of 31 participants who chose this picture." I turned my head and saw that there were less than 40 people on the stage. This meant that most of them chose correctly. Other people's expressions were similar to mine. They didn't care about it at all. Only a few people showed annoyed expressions. At this time, President Xie picked up the booklet in his hand and flipped through it. He said, "Next, I'll announce the geomancy of the 2nd place." Before I announce it, I'll first announce the results of our participants. There are not many people who chose this picture correctly. Only 9 people. As soon as he said this, the audience couldn't help but burst into an uproar. The 2nd place was actually so difficult. There were only 9 people who chose it correctly. It didn't even reach the final number of 10. Chapter 88. After the discussion gradually subsided, President Xie picked up the booklet in his hand with a smile and faced the audience below the stage. As soon as they saw this map, the entire venue fell into an uproar. Most of the feng shui masters watching the competition were dumbfounded. Many people even exclaimed, "This is impossible. This is clearly an ominous cave. How could it be ranked 2nd?" Not only them, but many of the contestants also had a change of expression. Their faces were filled with disbelief. I heaved a sigh of relief. The map that President Xie showed was the 26th one I had chosen. President Xie was a smiling man. He knew how to keep people in suspense. After showing his answer, he didn't hurry to explain. Instead, he smiled and asked the audience, "Just now, I heard someone say that this is an ominous cave. I don't know why everyone said that. Can anyone explain it to me?" As soon as he finished speaking, An elderly feng shui master stood up from the spectator stands and said with certainty, "This is definitely a dangerous place." In Eunuch Yang's Shakes the Dragon scripture, there are 40 kinds of ominous caves. One of them says, when water passes through the bright hall, the water flows without obstruction. When chi doesn't gather, don't use it. This map is the fourth of the 40 ominous caves. The water pierces the heavens layout. It's definitely an ominous cave. His words resonated with many people. Many of them whispered to each other and looked at Chairman Xie suspiciously. President Xie didn't care and still had a smile on his face. He turned to the contestants and asked, "9 of you chose this feng shui map. It's obvious that you think it's a good place. I don't know how you judged it. Can anyone explain it to me?" As he spoke, the other feng shui masters also looked at the contestants' seats. Their eyes shined brightly. This was a good time to show off. Soon, a young feng shui master who looked about the same age as me stood up. This young man was quite handsome, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His face also carried a bit of arrogance, as he said in a clear voice, "What that senior said earlier was right. At first glance, this place is indeed the layout of water breaking the heavens. When I first saw it, I also thought so, but when I looked at it again later on, I found something strange." He paused. The old feng shui master was a bit impatient and hurriedly said, "What's strange about the ominous cave's layout? Tell me about it." Seeing his attitude, I slightly shook my head. In reality, many feng shui masters were like this. They were very stubborn and followed the most rigid rules. However, they didn't know that feng shui wasn't fixed. Many times, a small difference could lead to a great change in the original feng shui layout. The young feng shui master didn't get angry. After glancing at the old feng shui master, he continued to speak. "The water pierces the heavens layout originally said that the water would pass through the bright hall and the air wouldn't gather. That's why it was identified as an ominous cave. However, after carefully looking at this picture, I found that although the water passed through the hall, it wasn't unobstructed as the previous senior had said. There was another mystery behind it. Everyone, take a closer look. Is there a part in the middle of the water that is slightly wider than the others?" The people who were listening attentively lowered their heads to check the booklet in their hands. Soon, they found the part that was slightly wider. However, no one understood it. The old feng shui master asked again, "There is a part that is slightly wider. However, the bright hall is used to hide wind and gather air, so it must be surrounded by water. Even if it doesn't have the tendency to gather air, it should at least be blocked by a water outlet and heavily locked. However, this part is only slightly wider. It's far from a water outlet or heavily locked." Although the old feng shui master was stubborn, his knowledge of feng shui wasn't vague at all. Each of his words was quoted from the classics, which made it sound very reasonable. The other feng shui masters who didn't understand it nodded secretly. They looked at the young feng shui master with more doubts. Seeing these doubts, the young feng shui master was not in a hurry. He just shook his head slightly and continued, "It's not just a slightly wider part. It may not be easy to see from the picture, but in reality, when we see running water like a stream, once there's a place where the bank is obviously wider, the water will not flow straight, but will form a whirlpool. Once a whirlpool is formed, the sand at the bottom of the water will be blown up and flow downstream. Over time, the power of the water itself will even dig a deep hole below. Once this deep hole appears, the whirlpool of the water will be more obvious. The river in the picture is clear and static. We can't see the structure of the whirlpool, but we can see the semicircular stone walls on both sides of the bank. Speaking of this, the young feng shui master's mouth raised into a smile. He continued to explain with confidence. The stone walls are semicircular, but there is no trace of artificial carving. It must be formed naturally. But how can it be so coincidental that 2 semicircular stone walls are formed naturally on both sides of the river? So, I don't need to guess that it's because the river has been spinning and flowing for many years. That's why the stone walls on both sides of the river have formed this way. From this point, I can infer that my previous deduction is correct. This place isn't just slightly wider, it's a natural whirlpool. At this time, We can use the point in the book. 10 places surrounded by water are not as good as one whirlpool. The naturally formed underwater whirlpool that hid wind and gathered chi was a very accurate Great Fortune cave. Once buried, one would be able to enter the Great Fortune realm. So, this isn't a Heavenly Heart Water Breaks layout, but a Heavenly Heart Water Gathers layout, which is very rare. When he finished speaking, the whole place was silent. Everyone was thinking hard, and the expressions on their faces gradually changed from doubt to astonishment, and then from astonishment to excitement. Finally, under President Xie's lead, all the feng shui masters in the audience applauded. Even the old feng shui master who had doubted him put down his prejudices, his face full of admiration. I curiously looked at the young feng shui master, admiring him. Although I could see the layout of this Heavenly Heart Water Gathers, seeing it was one thing. Being able to explain it in such a simple way was another. At the very least, I didn't have the eloquence of this young feng shui master. After the applause subsided, President Xie sighed in admiration and concluded, "It's better to have no books than to believe in books." Today's event has given us a good example. Feng shui is broad and profound, just like this Heavenly Heart Water Gathers layout. Sometimes, there are some subtle changes that can affect the overall situation. With this kind of skill, one can go further in the feng shui master's path. President Xie's evaluation of this young feng shui master was extremely high. Everyone couldn't help but look at him. At the same time, they also began to inquire about this feng shui master's background. Shortly after, the news spread that the young feng shui master was from the Meizhou metaphysics branch. His name was Zhang Wenfei. After hearing the news, I was bewildered. It was the Meizhou metaphysics branch again. The respected Mr. Zhao Dingwu was from the Meizhou metaphysics branch. Now, this young and knowledgeable feng shui master was also a member of the Meizhou metaphysics branch. I couldn't help but think of Meizhou. It was said that it was the largest gathering place for the Hakka people. It was said that after the Cliff Mountain, China would no longer exist. At the end of the Song dynasty, the culture of China was greatly damaged, and the country's fate declined. Not even 1 out of 10 Han people survived. Only a small number of Han people wandered to other places and became the Hakka people of the later generations. Other languages had their own regions, but only the Hakka language was spoken in the southern part of China. It was even spoken in Taiwan and Southeast Asia. Many people say that Hakka is the ancient language of the Han people, the true language of the Han people. Perhaps it was because of these historical reasons that the Hakka people had preserved their traditional culture more completely, and they were more agreeable to it. Chapter 89. After summarizing the second place, Chairman Xie sat down with a smile. After the feng shui masters in the audience discussed for a while, Chairman Wang stood up again and said with a smile, "Next, I will announce the number 1 feng shui treasure land in this competition. As usual, we will first announce the number of people who chose this treasure land." While saying that, he tidied up the booklet in his hand and raised a thin stack. "There are only 2 people who chose this treasure land." After saying that, the audience burst into an uproar again, but this time I wasn't nervous. Although I recognized that the second and third place feng shui maps were auspicious points, I wasn't sure how good they were. However, the last picture that I confirmed was definitely an excellent feng shui spot, and it would definitely be ranked first. The only thing that surprised me was that there were only 2 people who got it right. It seemed that this group of contestants wasn't as strong as I thought. After the uproar subsided, Chairman Wang opened the booklet and looked at the audience, announcing the final answer. I focused and looked at it. As expected, it was the 7th picture that I confirmed at the last moment. After the answer was announced, the audience started to discuss again. A middle-aged feng shui master in the audience seat said in a loud voice, "This is clearly just a turtle tail point. Although it is an auspicious point, it can't compare to the previous 2 good points. How can it be ranked first?" As soon as he said that, someone in the contestant seats said in a mocking tone, "Turtle tail point? I don't think that's the case. This is clearly a snake's cave." After saying that, many people in the contestant seats nodded in agreement. However, most of the people in the audience seats were confused. Both sides had their own opinions, and no one could convince the other. I sat there and watched in amusement. This feng shui map of a ghost house was marked halfway up a mountain. There were several dragon and tiger passes in front of it. When it reached the foot of the mountain, it formed a terrain similar to a turtle tail. From the perspective of feng shui, this was indeed a turtle tail point. It wasn't too good, but it was also an auspicious point. At first glance, I also thought it was the turtle tail cave. However, I soon found something was wrong. There was indeed a turtle tail at the foot of the mountain, but the tortoise's tail didn't stop. It continued to spread up the mountain, faintly connecting with the mountain ridge. It formed a long and narrow vein that looked like a snake. This was the snake cave mentioned by the feng shui master on the contestants' seating area. In feng shui, this kind of hidden meridian was known as the hidden dragon. To ordinary feng shui masters, the hidden dragon was extremely difficult to distinguish. However, it was different for geomasters at the geomaster realm. Geomasters at the geomaster realm could use their Dao Qi to see through the layer of disguise on the surface and easily recognize the true appearance of the hidden dragon. However, this snake cave was no longer an auspicious cave, but an unmistakably ominous one. Although there was a saying in feng shui that snakes were small dragons, it was different in the feng shui of a ghost house. In the feng shui of a ghost house, dragon veins could be real or fake. Fake dragon veins were commonly known as snake veins or centipede veins. Therefore, this kind of snake-shaped meridian was naturally not a good feng shui. While the two sides were arguing, President Wang's expression turned cold. He coldly snorted at the person on the participants' seating area and said, "Relying on your geomaster cultivation to see through a hidden dragon, what kind of ability is that? What's more, this is a rare natural meridian, yet you thought it was a snake cave. Not only do you not know shame, but you also speak eloquently. With this kind of temperament, it will be difficult for you to achieve great things." As the head of a branch, President Wang's cultivation was extremely high. When he reprimanded that person, he had a different kind of imposing manner, causing that participant to lower his head in shame, not daring to argue back. At this time, the fat President Xie came out to smooth things over. He smiled and said, "Everyone, there is no need to argue too much. Since there are two participants who have chosen the number 1 meridian, let them come out and explain the reasoning behind it. Everyone will naturally understand. Come, which 2 young heroes have chosen correctly? Why don't you come out and let everyone see it?" Originally, I was calmly watching the others argue. I didn't expect that President Xie's words would push me out. Helplessly, I could only brace myself and stand up. After I stood up, all of the feng shui masters' gazes focused on me, making me feel very uncomfortable. At this time, President Xie opened his mouth again. "I remember that you are from the Shenzhen branch. As expected of our Guangdong's number 1 metaphysics branch. Talented people keep coming out." After jokingly sighing, President Xie asked again, "There is another young hero who has chosen correctly. Why doesn't he come out?" As soon as he said that, the gazes that gathered on me finally shifted to look at the other participants. I was also quite curious as to who the other person was, so I also looked at the surrounding people. What I didn't expect was that the last person to stand up was actually Nangong, who was sitting beside me. This fellow had a frivolous smile on his face. He stood there in a sloppy manner. His temperament was completely different from everyone else's. He didn't seem like a feng shui master at all. On the contrary, he looked like a playboy who had nothing better to do. Seeing him stand up, the surrounding people also burst into an uproar. There was quite a bit of discussion about his appearance. President Xie, who was on the rostrum, didn't care. He also praised him. Then he smiled and asked the two of us, "Which one of you will explain to everyone the principle behind the number 1 acupuncture point?" Before I could say anything, Nangong directly sat back on his chair. Pointing at me with a smile, he said, "Brother Zhou Yi's knowledge of feng shui is solid, and his eloquence is also outstanding. Let him explain. I just guessed it, so I won't join in." This fellow was purely acting like a scoundrel, leaving me speechless. I could only brace myself to stand there and answer everyone's doubts. Just like what the two big brothers said, this feng shui looks like a turtle's tail at first. After careful observation, you can see that it's a snake-hidden dragon. That was all I could see at first, but when I looked through it again, I found something strange. Speaking to this point, I paused and then continued. Everyone can pay attention to the mountain ranges on the left and right side of the picture. It's not the mountain range where the snake-hidden dragon is located, but the mountain ranges in the background on both sides. After I said that, everyone lowered their heads to look at the picture in their hands. After a while, someone frowned and subconsciously asked, there seem to be a few mountain ranges in the distant mountains that extend to both sides. They look like turtle legs. When the snake-hidden dragon reaches the top of the mountain, it also has a snake head. No, it's not a snake head, but a turtle head. Is this a turtle-hidden, auspicious cave? As soon as his voice fell, someone came out to refute. How could it be? In feng shui of a grave, the most taboo is to choose a location that is too broad. A person's fortune is limited, and graves are also divided into different sizes. If you want to include such a distant mountain range, how big would this grave be? How would the person buried here bear it? This time, without waiting for me to explain, President Xie on the rostrum directly asked with a smile, "What if you bury an emperor?" Just as he finished speaking, the person's face suddenly changed. His mouth slowly opened, as if someone was strangling his neck. After a long time, he involuntarily said, "You mean Emperor's tomb?" Following his words, the hall buzzed with noise. Emperor's tomb. These two words, to a feng shui master, had a very special meaning. Emperor's tomb was the place where the Son of Heaven was buried. Normal feng shui masters couldn't touch the Emperor's tomb's geomancy. It was rumored that only those who had reached the heavenly master realm could try. No matter which feng shui book it was, there was no record of the Emperor's mausoleum. To ordinary feng shui masters, the Emperor's mausoleum was more like a legend than a real thing. No one would have thought that they would see it here today. At the beginning, I didn't think about it. It was purely a coincidence at the last moment that I found the structure of the mountain range in the distance. Then, I inexplicably thought of the two words Emperor's Tomb. Combined with the feng shui map, I found some clues. The excited discussion in the meeting hall didn't stop for a long time. In the end, President Xie spoke up to calm the crowd down. However, everyone's face was still flushed. It was obvious that they hadn't recovered from their excitement. This is our Metaphysics Union's president, Li, from Shenzhen. When he found out that the exchange meeting was going to be held in Shenzhen, he specially sent a feng shui map. At that time, he told us that if no one chose this map, then he wouldn't mention its origin. At that time, including the president, we all thought that no one would be able to find any clues from such a complicated map. We didn't think that not only did someone see through it, but it was also two people. The younger generation will surpass the older. Chapter 90. 3 Feng Shui Diagrams, a total of 6 points. After President Xie announced the result of the last diagram, I already knew my results. All 3 diagrams were correct, so 6 points were in my hands. I can't say that I didn't think of this result, but I was still overjoyed. Following that, President Xie and President Wang announced the results of the statistics. Nangong and I were tied for first place. As for the other participants, the highest was only 3 points. The lowest was 1 or 2 points. There were even a few people who didn't get a single point. Because the rules of the Dragon Seizing Tournament was that only those who got points in the first stage could advance to the second stage. Those who didn't get points had no choice but to dejectedly accept their early elimination. What surprised me was that Xie Tianyu was actually among those who didn't get a single point. Although I was very disdainful of his character, in reality, Xie Tianyu was able to reach the Earth Master stage at such a young age, so he definitely had some ability. I didn't think that he would end up like this. When I looked at him, Xie Tianyu also happened to look in my direction. His eyes were filled with shame and anger. After noticing that I was looking at him, He couldn't help but reveal some anger towards me. Some people always like to find excuses for their failures. I reckon that this fellow was also holding a grudge against me for his failure. However, I didn't care about what he thought, nor did I take it to heart. Who knew that when I didn't want to pay attention to him, he would take the initiative to look for me? Just as my gaze moved away from him, this fellow suddenly seemed to have gone crazy. He pointed at me and shouted, "Zhou, he only joined our Shenzhen branch temporarily a few days ago. He doesn't have the qualifications to represent the Shenzhen branch in the competition." When he shouted like that, everyone was shocked. It wasn't because I had joined the Shenzhen branch temporarily, but because he was from the same branch as me. Yet he dared to undermine me at this time. Even those who didn't know the inside story instinctively felt disgusted with him. Many people frowned as they looked at him. Before I could say anything, Nangong, who had been sitting beside me without saying a word, opened his mouth at this time. He looked at Xie Tianyu with a smile and said, "So what if I joined temporarily? I only joined the Guangzhou Metaphysics Association a few days ago. Does that mean that I don't have the qualifications? According to what you said, are you the only one qualified to participate?" I guess Xie Tianyu was just enraged, so he didn't know what to say. When he heard someone else refute him, he was speechless. He just looked at me with resentment. Just like that, a small interlude passed. Losers were always easily forgotten, but only winners would be remembered. After President Xie announced the end of the first day's activities, the crowd below the stage dispersed. No one paid any attention to Xie Tianyu. However, there were quite a few people who surrounded me in Nangong. The other metaphysics societies were fine, but most of them were from the Shenzhen metaphysics societies. After all, the location of the conference was in Shenzhen, and there were many local feng shui masters. In addition, I was also a member of the Shenzhen branch. So many people used this excuse to chat with me. Most of them said something along the lines of, "I've long heard of your name, but I just didn't have the luck to get to know you. Now that I've met you today, I feel like we hit it off." I glanced at them, and there were even a few feng shui masters who came with Xie Tianyu to cause trouble for me a few days ago. These people were quite shameless, but I didn't really care about them. After laughing and joking around for a long time, I finally got rid of them. It wasn't easy for me to squeeze out of the crowd. I turned around and saw that Nangong sloppily following behind me. He didn't cause any trouble along the way, so he was just using me as a shield. I got angry and couldn't help but say to him, "You also chose all 3 diagrams correctly. Why are you hiding behind me? There are a lot of people who want to get to know you." Who knew that Nangong would say in a serious tone, "That's not the same. I already said that I was just guessing. Otherwise, do you think I would let you talk about something that was in the limelight?" I snorted disdainfully at his words. "Stop talking nonsense. If you can guess everything correctly, then wouldn't other people be so ashamed that they would hit the wall and commit suicide? You should have a limit to your modesty." Nangong still looked serious. He shook his head and slowly said, "I'm not being modest. At that time, when I was looking at the pile of diagrams, I didn't know what to choose. Coincidentally, I turned around and saw that you chose those 3 diagrams. So, I followed you and blindly guessed those 3 diagrams. You see, if it's not blind guessing, then what is it?" I opened my eyes wide. This guy copied me? Looking at his calm face, I couldn't imagine that someone could say that he plagiarized so confidently. How thick was his skin? Previously, I thought that my previous impression of him as a little rascal was a misunderstanding. But now, it seemed that it wasn't a misunderstanding. Not only was he a rascal, but he was also a scoundrel. Now, I suspected that his identity as a contestant was also fake. After all, I couldn't feel the fluctuation of Tao energy from his body. Although it was hard to imagine that the person who arranged the event would leave such a big loophole for him to sneak in, it was hard to say with this guy's temperament. After all, there was the saying, "It's dark under the light." Moreover, there are many schools of feng shui. It was hard to see the realm of many special cultivation methods, so he might have taken advantage of a loophole. Just as I was about to ask him for confirmation, Nangong spoke first. He yawned, seemingly a little sleepy. Shaking his head, he said, "All right, I'm just here to have some fun. I feel that this exchange meeting is rather boring. I won't be coming for the second round tomorrow. You can play by yourself." After saying that, this guy didn't care about my shock. He patted his butt and prepared to leave. But after turning around, he seemed to remember something. He turned his head and said to me, "All right, I gave you my business card. You have to take it well this time. If anything happens, remember to call me." "Okay, see you later." After saying that, he waved his hand at me and left, leaving me standing there in a daze. This guy, he just got the same first place as me, but he left just like that. He didn't even want to participate in the second round tomorrow. Even if he really plagiarized my answers, isn't this too cool? What's the point of plagiarizing me if he doesn't participate in the second round? Thinking about what he said to me, I searched my body for a long time and found the business card he gave me today. After looking at it for a long time, I didn't believe that this guy could help me if something really happened. I was going to throw the business card away, but after thinking about it carefully, I put it in my wallet. When I came out of the venue, I saw Yang Kai-chen standing at the door, seemingly waiting for me. What made me feel strange was that there were two people standing next to Yang Kai-chen, one old and one young, and I knew both of them. One was the old man Zhao Dingwu, who gave a speech on the podium this morning, and the other was Zhang Wenfei, who explained the water gathering heaven's heart feng shui in the afternoon. Why are these two people from the Meizhou metaphysics branch with Yang Kai-chen? With surprise, I walked to Yang Kai-chen's side. The old man and the young man stood there without saying anything. Yang Kai-chen smiled and introduced them to me. "Zhou, you should have met these two today. Let me introduce you again. This is Senior Zhao Dingwu, and this is Senior Zhao's last disciple, Junior Zhang Wenfei." I had a good impression of these two people from the Meizhou metaphysics branch. After greeting them with a smile, I asked Yang Kai-chen. I didn't expect Big Brother Yang to be old acquaintances with Senior Zhao and his disciple. Yang Kai-chen nodded and looked back at Old Man Zhao. His eyes were filled with gratitude and respect. Then he turned back to me and said, "When I was young, my family suffered a disaster. My father died early, and my mother and I were also plagued with illnesses. Later, Senior Zhao accidentally passed by my house and saw that there was a problem with the feng shui of my house. After giving my mother some pointers, my family situation gradually improved. After that, I also became interested in feng shui metaphysics. I slowly studied it myself and gradually entered this circle. In the past few years, Senior has also given me pointers on feng shui many times, but unfortunately my aptitude is poor and I haven't had any achievements. It turned out that there was such a past between them. I smiled and said, "Since Senior Zhao has given you pointers, then you can also be regarded as his registered disciple." I just said it casually, but who knew that Yang Kai-chen would quickly wave his hand and say anxiously, "I don't dare to say that. Senior's disciples are all geniuses of their generation. I don't dare to call myself a disciple and disgrace Senior's reputation for no reason." Old Man Zhao's hair was white, and his back was hunched, but he was in good spirits. His voice was like a great bell. He reached out and slapped Yang Kai-chen's head and scolded him in Hakka language, "Mangu." After scolding, he turned to me and said with a smile, "Young man, you are young, but your attainments in feng shui are not low. You are much better than this disciple of mine." Since an elder praised me, I naturally had to be modest. However, before I could open my mouth, Old Man Zhao waved his hand to stop me and said, "Today, this old man didn't come to find you for anything else. I just wanted to remind you that you might suffer some hardships in the near future. Remember to be careful when you handle things." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.